5:30. Thank you, Councillor Omade. Kaya, Nala Karak Nunga Mort, Kan Karak Ninja Buja. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the owners of this land. That wasn't right. Announcements by the President. I'd like to firstly acknowledge the Pemberton Mill Hall Committee for their tireless fundraising efforts, including providing sustenance for the many athletes that attended the Carry Valley Triathlon. It's an absolute credit to the Mill Hall how they take it upon themselves to ensure their funding to improve the hall. Many other committees could take a leaf out of their book for the proactivity that they take. I'd like to remind everyone that Tarmac is on this weekend. Plenty of entertainment, thrills and spills around Pemberton. Pop down and see what's going on in pretty Pemberton town. Also the Ag Show. The fireworks were absolutely spectacular on the Friday night, and the show committee needs to be commended for the very small committee for the incredible show that they put on every single year. I'd also like to acknowledge the gallant effort by all the candidates of the Warren-Blackwood area. It was a very close race. I'd like to congratulate Bevan Eates on becoming our new representative, and a heartfelt thank you to Jane Kelsby for all of her support over the past 4 years. Honourable mention to Councillor De Campo. Guess you're stuck with us for another couple of years. Apologies, Neil? And approved leave of absence we have.
Madam President, we have a partial apology from our Director of Community Services, Gail Epson-Cutts, who is en route from Perth at the moment. She's been caught in a bit of traffic, so she said she would be no less than 10 minutes late.
Thank you. We'll count. Approved leaves of absence we have nil. Declarations of interest.
Thank you, Madam President. We have one impartiality interest registered for 2 agenda items, so I suppose that's 2 impartiality interests, from Councillor Wilcox, Jenny Wilcox, in relation to agenda items 9.5.2 and 9.5.3. Those agenda items have to do with a change of use from a residential dwelling to a holiday accommodation on Shire Street in Walpole. And the nature of the interest is that Councillor Wilcox is a respondent to part of the consultation process. For those of you in the gallery that are wondering what an impartiality interest is, basically means that an elected member has a non-financial interest or a non-proximity interest, but they have a relationship issue or public submission relationship with regards to an agenda item, and Councillor Wilcox is allowed to participate in the rest of those agenda items.
Excellent. Public question time. 5.1, response to public questions taken on notice. There are nil. 5.2, public question time. This is the only opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. It can be on any matter, not just the ones that are on the agenda. You are given 3 minutes to ask a question of council, and it can be extended if I choose to. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question of council? No? Fabulous. Presentation, 6.1 petitions, there are nil. 6.2 presentations, there are nil. 6.3 deputations, we have 3 tonight. Firstly, I'd like to ask Mr. Sonoda if you would like to take...
Just a question, that's okay. I'm not sure that the gallery quite understood your first introduction there. They might be waiting for petition. I know there's some in the gallery that wanted to speak.
Deputation, I think.
We've got deputations.
2 deputations.
3.
Sorry.
Gosh. It's like I should be running the meeting. Mikey, would you like to take the stand? Thank you very much.
Okay, I probably had more to say, but this afternoon there was an email that came through from the Shire Planning Department. It was in relation to the development application that we've got in. So there's been some updated recommendations that have come through which have changed the volume of stuff that I was going to present tonight. So just wanted to firstly say thanks to the Shire CEO and the Planning Department for taking on board our requests for alterations to conditions and advice in relation to our development application. I've had a very brief chance to go over the amendments and just have some minor requests for changes to condition 6. I'm just unsure if it's appropriate to condition a development approval to private use and access. And if anything, I'd maybe think that advice is more appropriate, if anything. And a minor request to clarify condition 13, specifically the reference to dust. Just wanting to know whether this includes traffic on Green Road or is limited to just the physical development. So I don't really have much more than that because the amendments were as we'd requested. So I'm open to questions, I guess, either from the people that visited the other day or anyone who was unable to visit, if there's any questions.
Councillors, any questions? Happy with that?
What about response to the question regarding the dust? Can we answer that?
Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair. What condition was that in relation to? I missed that part.
Condition 13.
The construction works involve the implementation of the development must not cause a nuisance to neighbours through dust or sand drift.
No, condition 13 under the amended recommendations. The use hereby approved must not create community safety concerns or otherwise adversely affect the amenity of the subject locality by reason of or the appearance or emission of smoke, fumes, noise, vibration, odour, vapour, dust, wastewater, waste products or other pollutants to the satisfaction of the Shire of Manjimup.
Oh, look, it is open to council to remove that commission if it so wishes to do so. The amenity of a locality is protected through a variety of legislative instruments, whether that be the noise regulations. There's a variety of things. They just escape me at the moment. Look, it is open to council to remove that condition if they do see fit.
Thank you.
If I may, my concern was just more I can't control dust on Green Road and it's already a gravel road. So given that it's a condition, I think it just leaves a bit of a difficult scenario to potentially deal with.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may just provide a little bit of clarity on that, the intent of that condition relates to the subject property, not the road.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. Anything else, councillors? Councillor Omondi?
Can we have some clarity again? Could you repeat that? It's not the road, it's only the property? Is that what you said?
That's, Madam President?
Mr. CEO?
Yeah, correct, yeah. That's the intent of that condition, yeah. Not to create nuisance off the property through fumes, dust, noise, and...
If it's on the property, then it's on the property, it's not on Green Road. Oh,
That's sorry, Madam President, is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
That's correct, Councillor Omondi, yeah.
Anything else, councillors? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Second deputation, Mr. Roach.
G'day, my name's Tony Roach. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us today. Obviously, I don't do a lot of public speaking, so I'm a bit nervous and I'll try and get through it the best I can. Long-term landowners on Green Road, our concerns are pretty simple. We're worried about road safety, protecting priority agriculture, lifestyle and amenity impacts, and protecting the investments that are already made there by myself and other people. But as simple as our concerns may be, this is far from a simple planning application, and respectfully we should be treated that way. According to planning rules, a brewery or restaurant is not permitted unless council makes a special exemption. Shops are a straight out prohibited use. This, at the very least, should be the starting point for assessment and determining the application. The rules are clear. Council should not support the officer recommendation for conditional approval and should refuse the application. The number of objections alone demonstrate genuine concerns from residents, how this development will affect their lifestyle, amenity, road safety and ongoing farming operations. The nature of the proposal and the absence of essential supporting information has produced valid concerns that deserve to be taken seriously. Road safety is a key issue. For those who came to look at the green rate on Monday, I'm sure the concerns were pretty evident. You would have witnessed firsthand the amount of dust generated by cars travelling at low speed. Add to that poor visibility, an unfamiliar winding road with a few blind bends, throw in some heavy machinery movement or, oncoming cars, and you could end up with a serious accident waiting to happen. Council must agree we cannot compromise the safety of our families, our children and others who use Green Road. Safety should be paramount when considering the planning application and the suitability of this road for access. As councillors, you will be ultimately responsible for the safety of those on Green Road and the greater public. At the very least, we're requesting a proper traffic impact assessment to be provided before planning approval is given. The application relies upon the recommendations of complicated, uncertain conditions and further assessments such as intersection designs, access arrangement, parking plans, nutrient, water and wastewater management, just to name a few. What is required to meet many of the conditions is uncertain. How or if these will be met is a serious question mark. Who is ultimately responsible for ensuring these recommendations are adhered to before building approval is granted? These questions create uncertainty for the community and should do for councillors as well. Approving the application in the absence of this information is manifestly inconsistent with good planning and condition setting and reflects the generally poor and inadequate development application that should never have been accepted by the Shire. Now, I appreciate I wrote this before there was some other stuff that went on this afternoon, which we've only received a couple of hours ago, which I find absolutely appalling myself. What is even more concerning is that the applicant is now seeking to have many of these conditions removed or modified. He's effectively seeking carte blanche to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, without the appropriate checks and balances in place that would ensure a good planning outcome and perhaps even more importantly, a safe environment. Without meeting all of the many recommendations before planning approval, the council is putting the cart before the horse with the potential for a project of this size to quickly get away from you. We can already see this happening in front of you tonight. I suppose that information will come a bit further down the track. Green Road is zoned priority agriculture, a zoning that is crucial for ensuring food security, supporting local economies and promoting sustainable land management. The inadequate and ill-considered application puts all of that in jeopardy. Approval of this application shows complete disrespect for zoning and the agricultural industry. It is clear this development is fundamentally incompatible with existing land uses or the character of the area. Multiple government agencies have expressed their concern regarding this development. DFES, this location does not provide for an appropriate bushfire protection and presents an unacceptable risk to preservation of life, property and infrastructure. DBCA, the private use of forestry tracks as primary access roads is not approved and is really unacceptable. Main Roads have, said they'd like to see an intersection upgrade. Main Roads is well accepted as someone that knows what they're talking about, I would suggest. DWER, trade waste management and seeking further clarification on volumes as the proposal is close to permitted thresholds. The commencement of works on an access road before planning approval including the clearing of native vegetation without a permit, so that's already happened. It's beyond me how that goes anyway. Commencement of works undertaken across the watercourse of a creek also without a permit. You know, before that's sorted out, I don't know how you can go any further forward if these permits are not forthcoming, or there's big fines imposed. Is that going to, you know, put pressure on the further development and shortcuts taken in other areas? A decision on a development of this type should not be rushed. If more important information is needed, clearly, I think it is, then the application should be refused or at the very least deferred until all the information is provided and the applicant is then transparently re-advertised to neighbours for comment. And I would like to suggest that when, if it is re-advertised, we do have more than 2 hours to respond. Like, it's absolutely beyond me how this can go ahead. It is farcical, to say the least. Anyway, keen for councillors to ask any questions. Thanks for your time.
Councillors, any questions? Nope. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, do you want to address him? Last one, Mr. Durl.
Thank you, Madam President. Hopefully my one should be pretty straightforward and simple.
Mr. Durl, can I ask for your name and address? please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Graham Durl, 34 Lawson Road,
Thank you.
in Corcup. And also representing the Pemberton Visitor Centre tonight as the Chair.
Thanks.
So over the last 12 months, the Visitor Centre, along with the CRC, have both persevered within an unfavourable working environment. And if anyone has been into the new community hub over the last 12 months, you would know exactly what I mean. It is a confusing layout for the community and visitors to our town, knowing what services they are after, especially when the other tenants of Ballingmire have different operating hours. These challenges were highlighted recently in the consultant's recommendations. Our staff have made it work to the best of their ability to cohabitate in the challenging and stressful environment. This cannot go on any longer. I am here representing our staff and team who have to work there. The caravan park is not a cash cow for the Pemberton Visitor Centre. It does offer some financial relief. However, as most people know, it was taken back some years ago in a rundown state and requires significant reinvestment. As you are all aware, Pemberton does its fair share of the heavy lifting when it comes to tourism within our Shire. I just want your support to assist us as a tenant to continue to function as an effective tourism organisation by making a constructive decision tonight. I support Councillor Ventress's motion and I hope you'll all agree. Councillors and Shire staff have spent enough time on this when we can see a way forward with your financial assistance. Councillors, I appreciate and respect your contribution to our Shire. Thank you for your time.
Any questions? Councillor Darren. Councillor Mylan.
Thanks for your deputation. So in the motion that you're talking about, where it's proposing $40,000 ex gratia payment to the visitor centre.
That's correct.
So what would you see as how you would spend that money? What would be the first things you would do?
Well, there would be a division put in between the CRC and the VC, because currently how it works, or it doesn't work, to be honest with you. We are making the best of a situation, well, a terrible situation, to be honest with you, but we're making the best of it in a positive way. Yep. So we'd be looking at putting a division in, and there will be finalisation of counter space that would be required in there, and there would be an entry going in as well. So there's potentially significant investment, but obviously being smart with the money that would be forthcoming, hopefully from the Shire, would make the best of it. So it would be ultimately a division between the CRC and the Permanent Visitor Centre, because we're able to close the door at an earlier hour that's chosen and not have the confusion of people coming in after hours and the risk of shoplifting within our premises, because that is a serious concern that we're facing currently. The CRC and the VC can close, and then the library on a Friday and other days are open until Friday. People walk in, the doors open up, and then they're free to walk through the whole building. It's not conducive going forward.
How confident are you that you'd be able to get the door and the division done within that $40,000 budget?
Well, obviously, we'd like more, but if that's the motion, we'll accept the motion. How confident? Well, we'd probably have to contribute to bring that forward. So, but yeah, I suppose if there was a start and we had some money forthcoming allocated by the Shire, we'd be in a good path going forward.
And what sort of time frame would you be looking at, say?
Well, as soon as possible. So within the next few months, ideally, but it all comes down to Shire approval on potential infrastructure internally and all of that.
Yeah.
The sooner the better, because it's costing us financially currently, the way the situation sits at the moment, and emotionally with the staff. They're struggling, like as in it's tough. Both sides, the CRC, Gay, with the CRC, they're struggling as well. They've got their challenges, but we're looking at an option of being able to step back to allow that piece for that area. So, look, I think this is a pretty straightforward option or opportunity, but for us to turn around and leave this whole debacle and put it to bed and go forward. So, it would go a long way.
Councillor Darren?
So I do have a few questions. Firstly, and I think you've alluded to it already, so the concepts that were developed by the consultant that were concepts of a division, has any of that actually been planned out with consideration to how air conditioning will be accommodated, how other parts of the automatic doors, obviously there's quite a bit in the way of designing that. Has any of that work been done?
Look, there's been what work's been done with the doors. There's been no plan in regards to automatic doors. We're thinking potentially we don't know exactly how that would work. We'd need screening as well once the main doors were open during the day, like we'd want some kind of fly screen protection. So the only plans or quotes that we've had is to remove the frosted glass and turn it into clear glass so people can see inside. And with the aircon, we couldn't go a full wall in the area that we're proposing to put the division, because the way the aircon, unless we're going to go through and relocate the aircon, that's not going to be practical financially.
So nothing has been. So there actually hasn't been anybody that's come in to actually turn those concepts into any plans at this stage?
Not at this stage, no.
Okay.
No.
So that would probably answer my next question. Has any costings been put around what the entire project is likely to be?
Look, it would potentially go into the hundreds of thousands if you were to go, but there's other ways of putting divisions in instead of structural walls. They're the kind of things that we're looking at potentially. So we'll work with the best we've got available to us, working with the Shire, to put non-structural divisions in place to overcome these problems, financial problems and structural issues or aircon issues.
One last question then.
Yeah.
Has this been taken to either the CRC and or the Pemberton Visitor Centre Board to make any commitment of funding to this project above the $40,000?
No, but if we can get a commitment from the Shire to say, look, they're going to come forward with $40,000 to assist us, then we'd be in a better position and then be able to go, we'll come up with a plan going forward. I can hypothetically sit there and go, but they're going to come back to me at board level and they're going to go, well, why don't you get a commitment from the Shire first? And that's what I'm here for.
No, great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Good. Excellent. Thanks, Mr. Dell.
Thanks.
Delegates reports, 6.4 delegates reports. There are nil, and Director of Community Services has entered the building. 6.5 conference reports. There are nil. Before we go to the minutes, it was remiss of me to acknowledge Catherine Salenza, from our Roadwise. Thank you, Ride, who works very closely with us to ensure the safety of our roads hierarchy and the activities that we take in a holistic view to make sure that our roads are safer. Thank you for joining us, Catherine. Okay, 7, confirmation of previous minutes. Councillor Ventris.
I'd like to move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 25th of February 2025 and the minutes of the special meeting of Council held on the 6th of March 2025 be confirmed as a true and accurate record, but just a small correction. For the 6th of March, page 16, it's recorded that Councillor Bugie voted for and that the decision was 4-1. The 4-1 is correct, but Councillor Bugie was absent from the room. So I'd just like that correction made to the 6th of March minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ventris. Is there a seconder? Councillor Wilcox. All those in favour? Carried 9-0. Thank you. Okay, 8, motions of which previous notice has been given. 8.1, notice of motion. Councillor Omdale.
Thank you, Madam President. Councillors, I don't want to labour this issue. It's been dealt with before, as you can see from our information supporting this, that there was a motion moved on the 26th of March 2020.
Councillor Omdale, can we just get a mover and a seconder before we go into anything else? Are you moving this, Councillor Omdale?
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I'd like to move, I'm going to find it, that Council direct the Chief Executive Officer and the Shire President to jointly write to the State Government and Commonwealth Government seeking those governments to remunerate volunteer firefighters and emergency services personnel.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mylan. Councillor Omdale, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I'm just a bit carried away with my enthusiasm for this issue, Madam President. As you well know, volunteers play a very important role in our community across the whole spectrum. And, recently bushfires to the forefront, but there's a whole lot of other volunteers, emergency services. There are volunteers in the health system, in the education system, right across the whole spectrum. As I was about to say, that I did move a motion in 2020 that the Shire Manjimup request the West Australian Local Government Association, WELGA, to advocate for the state and Commonwealth governments to introduce a payment system for emergency services volunteers to partially offset their income lost when volunteering in emergency events. That then went to the South West Local Government Association, was carried, and then was considered by WA Local Government Association. So it's not new. And you'll see on page 7 there's some suggestions where in his communication with WELGA, the CEO was given the advice that talked about a redesign of the local government grants scheme for a more equitable grants program, and then on the management of bushfire brigades under the yellow coloured in section that talks about recognising the changing risk environment, including work health and safety requirements and the increased intensity and frequency of bushfires, take account of the differing circumstances of the bushfire brigade units and regional variations in bushfire fighting approaches, and be adequately and equitably resourced through the emergency services levy. Now, I think it's bigger than that. The emergency services levy is a tax, and I don't believe that we should be increasing the emergency services levy. I think there should be a written decree by the federal government that they will compensate volunteer firefighters. And it's not new. In the Black Tuesday fires, there was a decision taken then by the federal government to compensate bushfire firefighters at $300 a day to a maximum of $6,000. So it is not new. And I think so it's always been in the too hard basket because it impacts on the issue of volunteerism. So that once you're paid, it's deemed that you're no longer a volunteer. My proposal, and I think what the federal and state government should consider, is to allow a 48-hour window where it would be deemed to be volunteering, and after that, if people are out of pocket. Bear in mind that the last fire we've had here in our own Shire went for more than a month. So volunteers were away from their families. Now, the converse is the paid firefighters, the DFES firefighters and the Shire reps, most of them are paid. So when you go to a fire, I don't know how many of you have been to a fire, when the first 8 hours comes up, there's a switch over, and everybody it's made sure that the firefighters are not fatigued or placed at any risk. And like with the volunteers, in the cases that I've been involved in the O'Sullivan fire in 2015, some of the volunteers were there for 15, 18, 20 hours, and they see the professionals going off for a break and they are still there at the front. The other thing you need to understand is what happens in a major fire. The big planes come over the top and you've got the heavy duties and the guys all dressed up in all their gear. And yes, our firefighters too are properly equipped nowadays, but the dirty work starts when the fire has been suppressed, and then the clean-up is done by the volunteers, the dirty work, in under the logs, putting out stuff that's under the ground and so on. So this request is to go to our state and bring it up as an issue and get it done. Otherwise, we'll finish up. If that fire down south, the Chesapeake fire, had been in heavy timber country, our guys would have been exhausted within 2 weeks, let alone over a month. So the impact on a small business of, say, 2 or 3 employees, that the business can only really stand about 48 hours. After that, they are losing money and putting themselves and their families at risk. So the fatigue issue, the psychological impact, all need to be taken into account. So I think that's probably it in a nutshell, but if we don't do this, we're going to get to a stage where our firefighters will hit the wall and we'll have a collapse. If we get multiple fires, and believe I put my bottom dollar on it, that sooner or later we will get multiple fires. We will get the perfect storm, and that will really put us to the test. We don't want to collapse our volunteers.
Thank you, Councillor Amadei. Question, Councillor Winfield?
Yes. I'm interested in the opinion of the CEO. Those of us in the room who are volunteer firefighters, do we have a conflict of interest?
It's an interesting question, Councillor Winfield. And for those in the gallery, Councillor Winfield's querying for the elected members who are required to make a decision on this matter, if they are volunteer firefighters, is there a financial interest created? I would suggest, given that the influence and the control that the local government has over the federal government funding volunteers is very minimal, and the likelihood of it, whilst I don't necessarily disagree with the sentiment, is pretty unlikely, I think, unless there's a significant action through WALGA. So I'd suggest it's probably an interest in common and doesn't trigger a financial interest.
Thank you. Councillor Mylan?
And even if it did, how many of us here are volunteer firefighters?
Well, I was one this year, but I went to a fire. helped put it out, but I wasn't signed up, but I did it anyway. Look, I'd like to speak in favour of this because I know that I'm pretty certain if you're a public servant, and I know of some, they do get paid, I believe, when they volunteer firefighters. There's some kind of leave that they can take. And I know people who work in the health sector. I know a couple of examples, and I'm pretty sure that there is some way for them to be remunerated whilst they're fighting fires. And I think whilst we could get caught up in figuring out how you're going to keep a track of this and how much you're going to pay them and what's a day worth, regardless of that, I think it is a critical thing because our volunteer fighters are so important to where we live, and I think that it's some way of compensating for people who are losing income, then I think we need to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Mylan. Is there any speakers against?
Thank you, Madam President. It's great to be back in the chamber with you all after a small break. I speak against this motion at the risk of not getting support for a couple of ones in the future that I want to support with. But we don't have a problem with volunteers being paid. I mean, volunteers are volunteers. We have a problem with volunteers wanting to be volunteers because of the structure that they have to go through to become volunteers. If you open the door to paying firefighting volunteers, which essentially I sort of don't disagree with, where does that then end? We've got paid ambulance people, we've got unpaid ambulance people, we've got unpaid SES people, we've got unpaid marine rescue people, and we've got other unpaid numerous surf club people and that sort of thing. As an example of that, in Pemberton right now, the captain, is it what they call him nowadays, the captain, who writes the permits? Having his prostate out today, I think. So they tried to get somebody else to be able to write out the permits. The paperwork to be able to write, this was the previous fire captain actually. The paperwork to get him to be able to write the permits out for the next 6 weeks was so incredulous, they just said, give up. This is not about paying volunteers, it's about making it easy to be a volunteer. And you'll get as many people as you need in a community to be a volunteer. When you need a war, when you need to win a war against a fire, and the left use terms like multiple fires, and it's always going to be the worst thing that we go to. When you want to win a war against a fire, you want people that want to come, not because they're getting paid, because they want to save their community. And we want to make it easier to save their community. Now, this motion is going to go nowhere, so it doesn't matter whether we support it or not, essentially, unless we get the whole or every local government in Australia supporting it. Imagine what it'll do to our economy. Imagine if every volunteer in this country is paid to go to a fire. I mean, Councillor Darren and I were just having a discussion about people maybe having to go to a fire, as you just said, for a week and coming out of a business. They won't care to come out of the business because they're going to be paid to go to the fire. So there are reciprocal effects that we don't even think about when you just say, let's pay a volunteer. Let's make it easier. Let's advocate. Let's go to state government and federal governments and let's make it easier to become a volunteer. I'm not a volunteer firefighter, but I've got a firefighter in my house. I'll do my block. It's too hard to do anyone else's. That's where the issue is. It's not about paying people. So think of it globally and think of it strategically rather than just thinking about paying somebody to go and fight your fire. We've got enough of them. You know, there's 15 aerial bombers in this state that have been supplying services for 15 years. When the fires were going for a month in Northcliffe, they had 9 people on the tarmac. They had their support crew, the filling crew and the pilots, and they weren't all here at once. If you drove past DBCA, there was a line of brand new Hiluxes that was 40 deep. So if you start paying people, that's what you're going to get, because they're going to want vehicles that are paid for by somebody else, because you're on a paid staff of somebody. It is just too difficult to do. Encourage people to be volunteers, and when there is a war to win, whether it's a fire, a flood or a cyclone, they'll come out in their droves to support their community. I urge you to vote this down.
Councillor Ventris.
I'd like to speak for the motion. I think there's a trigger in there that recognises the fact that people volunteer and they give a day or two, a few days. But there are those circumstances that arise where people are making commitments over and above what they'd normally commit to. And I think you need to take it in context. A lot of people living in country areas, you know, they're volunteering for you just run out of credit. You know, they're volunteering for the ambulance, they're volunteering for the fireys, they're volunteering for things that just happen in the city. You know, they're volunteering to drive the kids to sports events that are long distances away, and the list goes on. And I don't think one of the problems we have in trying to advocate for this is the average person that lives in Dalkeith or South Perth or whatever suburb in the city has no concept of what it is to volunteer to go and have to put a fire out or volunteer for a paramedic service. These services just happen. And so we will have real difficulty, and I agree with the comments already made, in getting any footage on this issue because the majority of the state, which is 80% of them live in Perth, have no concept of the degree that some of our volunteers have to go. So when people move into this zone where they've done their 2 days volunteering and they want to go home, or their businesses are suffering, or they need to be picking crops or whatever it may be, I think compensation is maybe a better term than being paid. I think people are entitled to fair and reasonable compensation in all manners of business. And I think if the state calls upon them, remembering that in this district particularly, where the volunteer firefighters are most likely to be is in state forest, an asset that this state deems necessary to hold. And this state could take some responsibility for looking after their land, just like every landowner has to take responsibility to look after their land. I think it's time the state most probably took on further responsibility of looking after their land. And this could be covered to some degree by the motion in front of us. Once volunteers have triggered a certain level of time, they've given the option to remain engaged, to save their communities, but be compensated. I understand it's a difficult one. I do agree with the sentiments that the most likely outcome will be nothing, but you've got to try. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ventris. Are there any other speakers for? Against, sorry? Okay, I'm going to speak against it. So although I understand and I completely value our volunteers, and I know that without volunteers, small community towns would not exist and they would not run the way they do. I do not think, though, paying our volunteers is the issue. I think it's the reduction of funding that the state and the federal government give to our emergency services. The volunteers are stepping up when the paid people are stepping down, and that's not on. It's about making sure that we have sufficient funding to ensure that the paid people are there at the times when they should be, and our volunteers are the ones going out to the little fires, not the big fires. They shouldn't be the ones being called in on a Friday afternoon because the paid ones want the weekend off and the state doesn't want to pay them double time on a weekend. So although I don't support this motion, I do support our volunteers, but I don't think paying our volunteers is the issue. Are there any other speakers for the motion? Okay, can we put this to the vote, please, councillors? All those in...
Point of order.
Oh, did you want to close the debate? Sorry, Councillor Moretti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion, obviously we're talking about fires because fires have been prevalent in the last couple of months. But the motion actually talks about to remunerate volunteer firefighters and emergency services personnel, whether it be, as Councillor Campo said, a cyclone, a flood, and you've seen what's happened in Queensland and northern New South Wales. It's an issue about a case in point. I'll just give you a case in point which highlights what I'm talking about. And it's really compensation rather than a salary type thing. Let's say you've got an electrician with 4 workers.
Point of order.
You can't bring new information into closing of a debate.
Okay, Madam President, I was just going to highlight the importance of compensation, and it's to do with workers creating a situation where a business is at threat because they volunteer. It's about compensation. It's about what the federal government did in the Black Friday fires, where they actually paid $6,000 and $300 a day and or $6,000 in compensation for volunteers who fought the fires. So there's a precedent there that the Commonwealth has brought forward. And yes, it's complex. It's complex because of the line of who and at what point do you compensate them. But the point is something needs to be done about this, otherwise we're going to have volunteers that collapse. At the moment, volunteers are insured. They're insured through the local government insurance scheme, through local government. They have life insurance, but they don't get compensated for their work, and that needs to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Oddie. Councillors, can we put it to the vote, please? All those in favour? 3, 4, 5, 6, and against 6-3. The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay. 8.2, notice of motion, Councillor Ventris. Sorry, Mr CEO.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. Sorry, Councillor Ventris, before you move your motion, I have another impartiality interest from Councillor Omaday in relation to agenda item 8.2, which you're about to move. Councillor Omaday is a member of the Visitor Centre and the CRC, and as it's an impartiality interest, Councillor Omaday can partake in the debate and decision.
Councillor Ventris.
I'd like to move that Council, 1, direct the Chief Executive Officer to make an ex gratia payment from the Shire of Manjimup to the Permanent Visitor Centre of $40,000. And 2, require that the expenditure of the $40,000 by the Permanent Visitor Centre is for the purpose of improving the functionality of the Permanent Visitor Centre and the Permanent Community Resource Centre shared space within the Permanent Community Hub Bayangmire building, specifically being for 2.1, a new refurbished entry door to the Pemberton Visitor Centre, and 2.2, internal partitioning, and 2.3, shifting services desk, and amend the 24-25 Shire budget as follows. And it's in the graph there in the agenda: transfer from the Strategic Asset and Development Reserve and payment to the Pemberton Visitor Centre, Pemberton Community Hub, Bayangmire Works, variation $40,000.
Thank you, Councillor Ventris. Is there a seconder? Councillor Amade, Councillor De Campo, sorry. Okay. Amendment to the motion.
It helps. I'd like to move an amendment to the motion.
Yep.
I'd like to add a point 4, and it is that all parties, being the Pemberton CRC, the Pemberton Visitor Centre and the Shire of Manjimup, enter into a tripartite agreement acknowledging that this funding is 1, sufficient enough to solve operational matters between all parties in the space they occupy. 2, that the groups acknowledge that the Shire of Manjimup will not provide further funding to each or any of the groups for internal changes to the building. And 3, without this tripartite agreement from each of the participating members, Shire of Manjimup would not be forthcoming with funding.
As a move to the motion, I accept those.
Thank you. Councillor.
That's an amendment, so I can do it as a, if you want to, if the mover wants to accept it.
Alternative.
Yeah.
He's accepted the amendment. Yep. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. Just in order, just to provide a bit of clarity in the order here. Thank you, Councillor De Campo, for the amendment. Councillor Ventris has the opportunity to have his opening remarks, and so I think the best thing to do, Madam President, would be to accept the amendment and deal with the amendment, and I suggest it's an amendment after Councillor Ventris opens the
Question,
debate.
Madam Chair.
Question, Councillor Amade.
In Councillor De Campo's amendment, he talks about no further funds being spent in the Pemberton co-location. So if this motion is carried tonight, we have an application before the Lotteries Commission to spend another $400,000 on that facility. Would that preclude us doing that? Doesn't what?
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councillor Amade, for the question. I think it's not up to me to say it's valid or not, but I think it's a very valid question. However, it will need to be dealt with after the mover has the opportunity to move the item for 6 minutes, I think, and then we can deal with the amendment and the subsequent questions.
Thank you. Councillor Ventris.
I'd like to speak for the motion.
Go for it.
I was nervous enough. As far as I'm concerned, this is a pretty simple sort of situation. We have a problem in Pemberton. This problem has existed for some time, possibly a couple of years. We have 2 reports that have been produced at the request of Councillor Darren and Councillor De Campo, and was supported by staff on the 23rd of May. Those reports were produced by Hammond and Woodhouse and H&H Architects. We don't want to go through the whole report, and we went through quite a lot of the details, but a quick key points to the review were confusing and uninviting entry, detrimental customer experience, dysfunctional overlap, requires immediate intervention, concerns were valid, reasonable and requiring an intervention. And I'd also like to, from page 11 of the agenda, organisational risk management, reduce any reputational risks with the community, and reduce any reputational risks with Lotteries West, given we accepted a large amount of funds to provide a space for CRC described in our independent review as dysfunctional overlap. And I'd just like to, in reference to that comment, draw your attention to agenda ordinary meeting of Council 8th of December 2022, put on the public record by the then CEO of the Shire. If the Pemberton Community Resource Centre is no longer to be part of the Pemberton Community Hub, this will have a significant impact on contractual grant agreements. The financial impact of this is likely to be in the estimated magnitude of $600,000, being the portion of the grant funding assigned to the Pemberton Community Resource Centre for building and fit out in the grant agreement. Now, one question might be asked is, what legal obligation have we got as a council to provide something better than what's been described by two independent people as a dysfunctional overlap? That question hasn't been answered, but I don't think we need to answer that question. What we need to ask ourselves, do we have a moral obligation to provide something better than something that's been described as a dysfunctional overlap? This is the shortened version of what's contained in the review and contained in the agenda. We have the funding. This is why we have reserves, so we can deal with problems when they arise. So what is the real problem here? As I see it, there are two main problems in getting this issue resolved. One, and this is most probably the minor one, it's been a couple of years and this problem, described as dysfunctional overlap, has not received staff support for a meaningful solution. Only a month ago in briefings on the 18th of February 25, with a report in front of us, it was announced by the officer to councillors that there was a design problem. It was not a design problem, it was a personnel problem. This is not supported by the two independent reviews, quite the opposite. And also, a further Lottery West grant has been lodged by staff. It fails to address the problem of dysfunctional overlapping, even though the community provided a priority list which addressed this problem. And the other more major problem I see in resolving this is that Pemberton now only has one councillor to effectively represent its community. The Labor government, in effect, took away Councillor Lawrence's position. I know we're moving to having 4 regional councillors, but I was voted onto this council as the West Ward councillor, as the Pemberton councillor. I have 6 minutes to convince 5 councillors who don't live in Pemberton on a daily basis of the need to act on this problem. The outer towns being a minority, this situation has existed in reality since 1961 at the inception of the Shire. Council conducted a referendum in 1961 on 2 names, the Warren Shire or the Manjimup Shire. The report to council showed 82% had voted Warren Shire. And that's why we have WA plates, Warren Hospital, Warren Calm, Warren Depot, Warren Transport, etc. The problem started on day 1, 1961, when staff informed the Manjimup Council that they could ignore the report and vote Manjimup Shire. Councillor Kelly and Councillor South and Councillor Flanagan protested and left the meeting, but they failed because they failed to convince the Manjimup councillors.
Madam Chair, can the Speaker please talk to the motion? Allowed to do this? History lesson?
I think history is important to some, so I'll continue with the problems that I face. This information, for those that are interested, is contained in the 1961 paper at the time called the Warren Times, now called the Manjimup Bridgetown Times. I have a few minutes to make my arguments to those that don't live in Pemberton as to why this should happen. We have the dollars, we have established there is a need, we require immediate intervention, and we have a moral obligation to Lotteries West and the community to clear the air and finish this project. And it's my reasons for bringing this to council is to give council an opportunity to finalise this matter. I congratulate the President of the Visitor Centre for the way he spoke tonight and the points that he made and the commitment that he's given to council to deal with this matter. I think you heard him say that it's an urgent, it needs urgent intervention. And I'd also like to remind council that we could face the potential of similar problems in this town in coming meetings, and we will be called upon to deal with those problems. And I'd encourage you to deal with this problem now and set somewhat of a...
6 minutes, Councillor.
Somewhat of an equity. There's my point. It's difficult when you're the only councillor in town to make the required information, given that a deputation is 10 minutes and I have 6 minutes in such an important matter. that affects the Pemberton community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor De Campo. Well,
I'll speak to you.
second or amendment? Or the second?
You can do
I
either.
need a second of the amendment, don't I?
You can do either.
Okay. Michael Chaney told his board of West Farmers that if you can't bring it in one page, then don't bring it at all. So I'm not sure that 6 minutes isn't plenty for you to be able to get people to support your motion. I think this is very, very important. But I also think we need to have an end to this. Now, to Councillor Omade's question, it is that my amendment to the motion in point 4 is that internal changes for these groups. So it is specifically about internal changes for these two groups. And I think there needs to be an acknowledgement through a tripartite agreement that the groups are happy.
Sorry, Councillor De Campo, sorry to interrupt, but can you just
Yeah, sure.
redo your amendment so we know
My took
what
scratchings?
you are,
Okay,
yeah.
point 4, that all parties being the Pemberton CRC Community Resource Centre and the Pemberton Visitor Centre and the Shire of Manjimup enter into a tripartite agreement acknowledging that the funding is 1, sufficient to solve the operational matters between all parties in the space they occupy. 2, that the groups acknowledge that the Shire of Manjimup will not provide further funding to each or any of the groups for internal changes to the building. And 3, without this tripartite agreement, funding from the Shire of Manjimup would not be forthcoming.
Thank you.
Given that the papers have been released this week about John F. Kennedy's assassination, I thought it apt to have a quote tonight in relation to that and this item, actually. But Goethe tells us that in his greatest poem that Faust lost the liberty of his soul when he said to the passing moment, "Stay, thou art so fair," and our liberty too is endangered if we pause for the passing moments, if we rest on our achievements, if we resist the pace of progress. For time and the world do not stand still, and they are not standing still in Pemberton. Change is the law of life, and those who only look to the past or the present are certain to miss the future. This is really important to get this thing off of our desk. I would say if it wasn't just once we heard it, it was rumour. If it's twice we heard it, there may be some fact to it. But we hear it all the time. Let's kick it to the group themselves by giving them some capital. Let's ensure that they enter into a tripartite agreement, that they're not going to come back, that they have to cooperate and they have to collaboratively work to solving their own problem rather than coming to us to solve the problem. I think the report clearly demonstrates there is a problem, and this is not just 1, 2 and 3. We're up to about 33 or 53 or 104 times that we've heard that there's a problem there. So in the vein of the previous motion, where there's a smoke, there's fire. So I urge you to not just support the amendment, but to support the motion itself. Thank you.
Councillor of Interest, second the amended motion. Did you want to speak to the amended motion?
No, I'll take the advice of Councillor Darren, and I've had my one page, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the amended motion? Against?
I'm confused. Did we just move an amendment to the motion?
Yes.
So we need to vote on the amendment.
We're just voting on the amendment.
Okay.
Just the amendment. Right, we're happy just to vote. Councillor Amade.
Madam Chair, just as a point of order, last time I checked, you have speakers for and against the amendment until it's exhausted, and then you put the amendment, which then would become the motion. Is that correct?
That's what I'm doing.
Is that what you do?
Yep.
I'd like to speak for the amendment.
Okay, that's what I'm doing. I just asked for speakers against. Now I'm going to ask for any other speakers. And that'll be you, Councillor Amade. So would you like to speak for the amendment?
I didn't think you'd got to the issue of the other speakers. I thought you were going to put the motion.
I was just about to do it. Thank you. Would you like to speak to the
amendment?
Look,
I just want to be very brief. I think you'll find the reports make it clear that the dysfunction in that area. The personnel get on very well in the and the visitor centre and the CRC and the group down there. And I'm supremely confident that given the challenge, the Pemberton community will rise to the challenge. You mentioned the Pemberton Mill Hall Committee, of which I'm also a member. You might recall the flooring of the Mill Hall when the Shire generously gave $20,000 to a $70,000 ask, and those funds were raised by a very small committee, diligent committee. And I think the same will happen here, and I think Councillor De Campo is right. It's time to bring this matter to a head and get it over and done with. Put the challenge, and I say to those councillors that are doubting it, put the challenge to the Pemberton community, the visitor centre and the CRC to raise sufficient funds to complete the project, and I'm confident that that will happen.
Any other speakers? Question?
To the CEO.
De Campo?
Sorry, I didn't put in the amendment that the Shire staff will draw up the tripartite agreement, just assuming, but you know what assuming does.
Mm-hmm.
So do I need to, are you happy with the amendment as it is?
I have no position on the amendment, as I don't vote on the amendment. My assumption was, and I will assume, that I was sitting down and writing a tripartite agreement.
As long as it doesn't make an arse out of you and me, that's all.
I'm quite happy to do that, if that is the decision of the council.
Councillor Mylan.
I'd like to speak to the amendment, not to the actual motion itself, because I think the amendment improves the motion. It covers the topics which the original motion was a little bit open-ended about how that $40,000 could go and how it would be monitored and what sort of acquittal process might be involved. So I'd like to speak for the amendment because I think it will make a better motion.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Where did we start? Councillor Ventris, did you? Oh no, Councillor De Campo. We're just going to.
Councillor De Campo
can close it. Yep. On the amendment.
I think we've given the gallery enough of politics for a minute, so we'll close the debate.
Thank you. Shall we vote on the amended motion, please, councillors? All those in favour?
On the amendment.
The amendment to the motion. Carried 9-0. Now it becomes a substantive motion that we...
I'll take my right as a seconder to speak for the motion.
Beautiful, we're back there again. Thank you.
There we go, we're back on track.
Thank you.
Again, I would just think that as a group we have heard so much about this community hub in Pemberton and the issues around the CRC and the visitor centre. Some think they're less of an issue, some think they're more of an issue. What we're doing is middle of the road. We're providing some seed funding. And what you will be amazed with, actually, is that providing $40,000 to two groups will probably turn that into $150,000 because they have people within the community that will come and assist, and of course they'll do it all through the correct channels of building, etc., etc. And this will mean that it takes it out of our court and it gives them the opportunity to not only collaboratively work together on a solution, but it gives them the capital to do that. I think one of the things that we don't have enough of nowadays is people coming to us with solutions. They come to us with problems and ask us to solve them. I think in this case, we have probably created part of the problem through no means or malice, but we just have. But now we're solving the problem. So I urge you to support the substantive motion.
Are there any speakers against the substantive motion? Councillor Darren.
Where do you start? First of all, I want to start with that I am speaking against this motion. I am not speaking against the project. I think that there is an issue. I agree that there is some validity to looking into how this is resolved. But I am going to speak against this particular motion as a solution for the apparent problem. And firstly, I do want to touch on that, look, I get this is a complicated situation, but it's not as straightforward as what maybe has been indicated. This is essentially a commercial lease to tenants. If you own a property and you rent it to tenants, the fit out is required to be done by the tenant. It is not generally accepted that the owner of the building will complete the fit out for a business or for an organisation. So I don't think it is as straightforward as the Shire of Manjimup has a responsibility to fit out a building in line with what the tenants want and how they want to use it, because tenants change and they fit out a building to suit how they are going to operate. So I do want to reiterate that it isn't the Shire of Manjimup's responsibility, although I acknowledge that this is a unique situation, that there has been a lot of collaboration. We have brought those organisations along with us, and they have been a big part of the grant application process, and so we do have a level of responsibility there. So I recognise that there needs to be a discussion in this space, and that certainly the Shire of Manjimup probably does need to have a role, although we need to determine what scope that actually is. My major issue with this motion, and the reason why I encourage you to vote against this motion, is that this Shire this council has on numerous occasions in the last 18 months that I've been on council, talked about the number of times we have sat here and we have ready, fired, aim. This is a perfect example of where we are doing this again. We have a concept. I am going through my own fit-out process of a building at the moment, and I know that the initial concepts that were given to me looked totally different in terms of the detail and the costings around it once we went through a formalised planning process and costings around it. We don't know those details yet because we have a conceptual plan. By going and putting this $40,000 aside and passing it on to an organisation, before we've done any of that planning, we really don't know how this is going to end up. And I, for one, do not want to be standing here in 5 years' time asking why is that $40,000 of the Shire of Manjimup's money still sitting in a bank account because the project ended up coming in at $200,000 and we couldn't come up with the additional funding. The groups couldn't come up with the additional funding to do it yet. And rather than spending that $40,000 on other projects that could have been done, waiting and doing this properly, getting the plans, getting the costings, and allocating this through a budget process when it is shovel ready, which is the expectation of almost every single grant that is out there. It is the expectation that those community groups put in a commitment, say that this is a project that is a priority to them, and what funding they can allocate or how they are going to achieve the funding allocation to get the project done. We've just mentioned the Pemberton Mill Hall, and I completely agree with that, but they came to the table with $50,000 and we topped it up. The tennis club, they came to the table with $100,000 and we topped it up. We don't go and give people money with no planning in place, with no costings in place, and no determination of how the additional money is going to be done to achieve that project and just leave it open. So I would urge you to vote against this motion. Let's get that work done. Let's go through the right processes and let's have a conversation about this at budget time, which in all honesty is 4 to 6 weeks away. All of that work can be done over the next 6 weeks and we can go and have this discussion as part of our budget deliberations and let's do it properly. Maybe it will be $40,000, maybe it will be $100,000, maybe it will be nothing, but we will make the decisions with all of the information in place and we will stop as a council ready, fire, aiming. We have to start doing things in the process that we say we want to do. If we are going to stand here and criticise past councils, criticise ourselves because we were the councillors there. I have made bad calls on this council for funding decisions where we should have asked for more information, we should have understood what the complications and the repercussions of our decisions were going to be. Let's not do it again. I don't want to look back and say that's another one where we didn't do it the right way. We have an opportunity to do it the right way. Let's get that process done. Let's take it to a budget. Let's discuss it and let's make sure that when we help these guys out, we are actually going to help them to achieve the outcome that needs to be achieved and we're not going to do it halfway.
I have a question. I have a couple. Is there a plan being developed that I don't know about? No plan being developed to go to budget? So if this plan that's not being developed comes in at 100,000, Councillor Darren, would you be happy to support 100,000 for the
I would be happy to
internal
support a
changes?
discussion about it.
So just to clarify, there is no plan for internal changes that anyone knows about?
If I can, Madam President.
No,
No,
sorry,
I
Councillor
can't.
Amadou.
Okay.
Director of Community Services.
The only plan that exists, through you, Madam Chair, is what was in the H&H Architects report about the possible way of dealing with some of the issues. And that had a lot more in it than just the 3 items that had been, but there was no detailed designs, no detailed costings or anything.
Okay.
There is detailed design.
Thank you, Councillor
Thanks.
Amadou.
I've got
Thank
my
you,
line,
Councillor
Councillor,
Amadou.
thanks. So supplement to that then, if they are, well, they're more motherhood statements, not plans then, would that be the best way to put it in that document? Concepts, sorry, that's the word I'm looking for, concepts.
Mr CEO.
Thank you for helping me.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councillor De Campo. If you can recall the agenda item and the attachments, and I know there are a lot of attachments, there were scale drawings with an overlay of hand sketching.
Okay, so are any of those concepts coming to our budget process?
Mr CEO.
That's a no. Can I have just had, because I'm not sure shaking the head works with the volume thing.
Madam President, are you happy for me to...
Mr. CEO, yeah, thanks.
At this stage, they're not, because,
Okay.
because the resolution of council from last meeting was not to do the works.
Question, Councillor Darren.
Has anything come to budget for the next, any plans come for the next budget yet?
Director of Business.
I can respond to that,
Mr.
Madam
CEO.
President. Yes, there will, not to council, no, but to staff. There might be plans for reticulation, there might be plans for plant and equipment, but nothing to do with this building.
This is fun. Another question.
Question, Councillor De Campo.
Are staff preparing to bring an item to council for a budget line item for internal changes at the community hub in Pemberton with the CRC and the visitor centre specifically?
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. The answer is no, because at the last resolution of council on this, at the last meeting, which I appreciate you weren't at, the resolution was not to do that.
Are there any other speakers for the substantive motion? Councillor Mylan.
Yep. I'd like to speak for this motion. I think, and I don't see the division between you're representing Pemberton and you've got to convince us non-Pemberton people. I tend to try and look at my role as looking across the whole Shire. I think this is a good motion, and I think the checks and balances that have been raised, Councillor Darren raised, I think are covered by the amendment that we've moved, which is a tripartisan agreement. So the parties have to agree to spend the money wisely. I take it on myself that I think I made a mistake when I voted in favour of getting a consultant and paying them probably nearly 30 grand, I can't remember exactly what it was, to come up with when I went to that building myself, I straight away kind of saw that these were problems that were there. They've been long-standing, and I mean, I've only been around for 18 months, but I think they were there, before my time. I see this as a good way of achieving a more probably economical. It could be team building for the group down there. I don't think we need to, when you do the tripartisan agreement, give them $40,000 now and let it sit in the bank earning interest for the next 5 years while they come up with their money. I think that it would be quite reasonable within this that the money is not transferred until such a time as the parties agree to how they're going to go about the process. So, what do I say? Tripartisan? Tripartite agreement. I'm speaking in favour of it. I think it would be a more probably efficient way, because I have heard the same councillors who in this room talking about, well, let's do it at the next budget for 100 and something thousand. I'm saying, well, we've got an opportunity here to work with another group, put our little bit in, let them come up with the other bit, and I reckon it will be we'll come up with a solution, and I'd like to see it happen quickly.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any other speakers? question, Mr. CEO? Yep. Yes, you can ask. You can ask a question, Mr. CEO.
Thank you. It's a little unorthodox that the CEO might ask a question, but seeing as
Everyone else is.
I am going to be responsible for implementing this if the decision is carried. Councillor De Camper, is it your intention in the motion that the tripartite agreement is brought back to council, or that it's at an executive? Okay, thanks.
Would you like to close, Councillor Ventris?
Yeah, with great pleasure. I'd like to close the debate. I'd like to close this whole issue, to be quite frank, Madam President. But just to refute a couple of the comments made, the comment that particularly around whether these tenants and how much they've contributed, just quoting from this information and without going into too many details, under community groups contribution, and this is an application that was given to Lotteries West, it lists it all out there. There was a total of $230,000 in total from all the different 7 groups. So the groups have contributed, including the Visitor Centre, including the CRC. So I just would make that point known because it was questioned why these groups haven't contributed. They have contributed. And also it's a little complicated when we talk about tenants and their contribution. It is the fact of the matter that we have received a substantial amount of money from Lotteries West to provide a suitable environment for the CRC. So with everything considered, they've made a contribution. And I just think we've got a perfect situation, and that we insist the Visitor Centre with $40,000, so it's a win-win situation, that we, as an organisation, put a finish to this project with their assistance. So by giving them $40,000, we engage their assistance to finish a project that we're well and truly, I think, should come to a finish and have an opening. We've had the building, the situation, we haven't had an opening to the facility because it's not finished. And the Visitor Centre, I don't believe, if we listen to what our President said, we're not going to put $40,000 in a bank account earning interest for a long period of time. They want to be out here tomorrow on this. The decision of council, put things in place, negotiate with the CEO and get this done, because if you read the report, it's not a satisfactory situation for the staff and it's not a satisfactory for our visitors. So I just encourage us, let's deal with this and get it done with. And I'm going to encourage everyone to vote with this. Thank you.
Question?
Sorry, I've closed the debate. I think that's out of order under standing orders.
Councillor De Campo.
It's not. You can ask a question. You can't debate.
You can't debate it after it's closed.
It's a question for the CEO. It's about the motion specifically. So point 1 is direct the Chief Executive Officer to make an ex gratia payment from the Shire of Manjimup to the Pemberton Visitor Centre. Does point 4 of the amendment that's been added to it change that point 1, or does point 1 mean that the money would have to be given to the Pemberton Visitor Centre?
Madam
Thank
President,
you, Mr. CEO.
My interpretation of it is that the $40,000 payment wouldn't be made until the tripartite agreement is executed by all 3 parties. It may not be precisely to the exact, but that's I'm picking up that's what the intent is.
Councillor De Campo, did you want to read the motion, the substantive motion, before we vote on it, please? Thanks.
If I can find it, because I've been flicking through the agenda. It should be council of interest. Do you want council of interest? Do you want to? But you don't have this
but
part.
You don't have the.
You don't have point 4.
Bit, that's what I was thinking.
I'll do it because I've got the amendment, so it doesn't matter. Okay. Yep, page 10. So we direct the Chief Executive Officer to make an ex gratia payment from the Shire of Manjimup to the Pemberton Visitor Centre of $40,000. Point 2, require that expenditure of $40,000 by the Pemberton Visitor Centre is for the purpose of improving the functionality of the Pemberton Visitor Centre and the Pemberton Community Resource Centre shared space within the Pemberton Community Hub, specifically being for 2.1, a new refurbished entry door to the Pemberton Visitor Centre area, 2.2, internal partitioning, and 2.3, shifting service desks. Point 3, amend the 2024-25 Shire budget described as follows below. Point 3, and that point 4, all parties, being the Pemberton CRC, the Pemberton Visitor Centre and the Shire of Manjimup, enter into a tripartite agreement acknowledging that this funding is 1, sufficient to solve operational matters between all parties in the space they occupy. And 2, that the groups acknowledge that the Shire of Manjimup will not provide any further funding to each or any of the groups for internal changes to the building. And that point 3, without this tripartite agreement, funding from the Shire of Manjimup would not be forthcoming.
Thank you. Councillors,
Which covers that question.
Vote on this, please, councillors. All those in favour?
That's 51%.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and against 1. Thank you. It's carried 8-1. Thank you. Right. Now we get to the actual reports. This meeting is the only time that councillors can formally debate the agenda items. I'll go through the items. Any items that councillors choose to take out will be listed on the board behind us. Any that aren't listed on that board will go through en bloc. If your item is not listed on the board, it will be passed as per the officer's recommendation. Okay, Finance and Administration. 9.3.1, Monthly Statement of Financial Activity, December 2024. 9.3.2, Annual Budget Review, 31st of December 2024 is absolute and taken out. 9.3.3, Shire Financial Payments for January 2025. 9.3.4, 25-26 Budget Directions Document. Statutory Planning. 9.5.1, Proposed Endorsement of Windy Harbour Coastal Hazard Risk Management and Adaptation Plan is taken out. 9.5.2, Proposed Change of Use from Dwelling to Holiday Accommodation at Strata Lot 2 in brackets 8 Shotter Street, Walpole is taken out. 9.5.3, Proposed Change of Use of Dwelling to a Holiday Accommodation Strata Lot 1 6 Shotter Street, Walpole is taken out. 9.5.4, Proposed Brewery, Tasting Room and Restaurant at Lot 8195 in brackets 341 Green Road, Channy Berrup is taken out. 9.5.5, Consideration of joining the Water Corporation Waterwise Council program. 9.5.6, Delegated Planning Decisions, February 2025. 9.5.7, Responsible Authority Report, Recommended consideration of a proposed motel at Lot 174, 175, 176 in brackets 13 to 17 Rose Street, Manjimup. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. Elected members, as of fairly late this afternoon, the Development Assessment Panel, the state government body, has agreed to an extension of time that the applicant has requested. They've requested an additional month in order to address some outstanding design issues that have been picked up by the design review panel. So I'm requesting that this be reviewed and presented to the April ordinary meeting of council. So it'll be taken out of this agenda and it'll come through to the next agenda.
Thank you. Community and Recreation Services, 9.9.1, Manjimup Trail Bike Hub Project Update. 9.9.2, Assessment of Community Sporting and Recreation Facilities Fund Round 1 Application 25-26, Manjimup Speedway Club Inc. Technical Services, 9.12.1, Proposed Review of Road Hierarchy Policy, 9.1.14. Works, 9.13.1, Framework for Identification of Road Priority Activities and Continuous Improvement. Someone like to move?
I move that the council adopt the recommendations contained in the council officers and committees reports on pages 1 to 105 of the agenda, with the exception of those on the board.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Can we put that to the vote, please, councillors? All those in favour? All those in favour? All those in favour?
Sorry.
Thank you. Carried 9-0.
Trying to find something.
Okay. Page 20, 9.3.2. Annual Budget Review, 21st of December 2024. Councillor Ivey.
Move as per the officer's recommendation.
And seconder, Councillor De Campo. Councillor Ivey, did you want to speak to the motion? Councillor De Campo.
Yes, I would like to speak to the motion, and I did ask our Director of Financial Business. Well, it wouldn't be very good business to lose 189,000 in a year up to 9 months. So I think we have it's incumbent on us this year, and although we have had a reduction in our financial assistance grant of 256,000 or something, give or take a few thousand. Thank you, Councillor Almaday. Always diligent with the numbers around the FAGS grant. We have this year, luckily enough, been able to top it up with 189,000 in interest from a loan that we've got for Ray Park. But we have a very, very stringent budget process coming up, and we need to be diligent in the way that we handle spending, because we can't continue to rely on interest. That's what the Shire of Manjimup did for a long time with Moen Road funding, and look what that got them in the end. So I support the motion, by the way.
Are there any speakers against? Can we put it to the vote, please, councillors? All those in favour? Carried 9-0. Page 39.5.1. Councillor De Campo.
Well, I'd love to move against the officer's recommendation on this one, but I won't. I'll move as per officer's recommendation just so I can have a say.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ivey. Councillor De Campo. Oh, Councillor De
Thank
Campo.
you, Madam President. I think documents like this are actually very dangerous for us in the future. And if you've read part of it, for argument's sakes, by 2052, we have to have a plan to be able to move sand back into what could be erosion. Now, you may not think that these plans mean anything. They might just sit on the table somewhere, and they are a requirement. So I'm going to vote for it, even though I'd like to move against it. In Albany recently, for argument's sakes, a major resort application, which was passed by council, but with a condition that if any erosion were to occur from climate change, they had to rehabilitate that site back to its original form. That resort walked out of town and didn't build the resort. So we need to be very cognisant of these reports that come to us in the future, because they have more meaning than what you think tonight than just endorsing this report. And I just wanted to make that point whilst receiving the report.
Councillor Ivey.
I'd just like to commend Anne Bentley, our Environmental Sustainability Officer, for all the work she's done on the report. It's very comprehensive.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the motion? Can we put it to the vote, please, councillors? All those in favour? Carried 9-0. Page 35. 9.5.2, proposed change of use from a dwelling to a holiday accommodation at Strata Lot 2 in brackets 8 Shotter Street, Walpole. Someone like to move the motion? Councillor Darren.
I'll move as per officer's recommendation.
And is there a seconder? Councillor Ivey. Councillor Darren? Do you want to speak to Councillor Ivey? Let's put it to the vote then. If there's no speakers? Against? Councillor Wilcox?
As we all know, Walpole is well known for its geographical isolation. This is why we need you, the councillors' support to encourage more families and skilled workers into Walpole community by ensuring there is long-term housing available. Approving this change to short stay will have the opposite effect, forcing another 2 school families out of town. Walpole town and community are in desperate need of residential housing to sustain the school, workforce and town. The school is working hard to encourage more families into the community. However, many are having to leave due to a lack of available residential accommodation. Please, for the survival of Walpole, do not approve another short stay accommodation in a residential area. There is ample short stay accommodation already available in Walpole. Right next to this application is 2 separate commercial businesses that offer short stay accommodation in a non-residential zoned area. If residentially zoned properties are allowed to run commercial short stay, accommodation, they should also be charged the same rates as the neighbouring commercial businesses. Does this happen when an application for change of use is approved? If not, why not?
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Any other speakers?
I have a question.
Question, Councillor?
To Councillor Wilcox, actually, because I'm not familiar with Walpole, and Murray is right. Councillor Ventris is right. Those people that are born and bred in the area are the best to take advice from. Though this particular house, is it a duplex? Yeah, I understand that. But has it been a holiday home or has it been a rental?
Oh, yeah, a rental, normal rental. It was a normal rental.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers for the motion? Righty, let's put it to the vote then, councillors. Are there any other speakers against it? No? Right, let's put it to the vote then, councillors. All those in favour? And against? 3 to 6.
On that decision. What?
Councillor De Campo?
Is that appealable through SAT?
Mr CEO?
Well, sorry, councillors, bear with me for a moment. It's not appealable because there's no decision. It's essentially laid on the table, yes. If the intent was to refuse the application, then an alternate probably should have been moved to refuse the application. So council has made no resolution on this. Which in effect will create a deemed refusal. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Director of Development Services. You're a couple of steps ahead of me here. So it will create a deemed refusal, which will then be appealed most likely through SAT.
Thank you. 42, let's go again. 9.5.3, proposed change of use of a dwelling to a holiday accommodation at Strata Lot 1, in bracket 6, Shotter Street, Walpole. Is there a mover? Councillor Ivey?
I move as per the officer's recommendation.
And a seconder? Councillor Darren? Councillor Ivey, did you want to speak to the motion? Councillor Darren? Anyone against? Oh, 2. Councillor Darren?
Look, I suspect it's going to get voted down. I have this same issue in Manjimup. I have serious concerns around residential properties and the availability of people, but I do think that is a bigger issue, and essentially what we are doing here, well, essentially what you will be doing here is, if you vote against this, is you are taking a broad issue that is a state and federal government problem, and you are putting that and the responsibility of that on a private landowner. And I don't know how many of you sat around here saying you shouldn't tell people what they should and can't do with their properties, and yet you're now telling them what they should and shouldn't be able to do with their properties because the state and the federal government haven't done their job in making sure that there's appropriate housing. I agree with Councillor Wilcox. It is a concern. We have huge problems with lack of housing, but it is not this owner's fault that there is a lack of housing in this community or any of our communities or all over Australia, or, to be honest, globally, because every single Barcelona's kicking people out. So this is not just happening here. But in the end, we are going to take that issue and we're going to put the responsibility of that issue onto a property owner and say, well, now it's your problem and you're not going to be able to earn the income on your property, although other people can, and we've approved everybody else's. Every time it comes here, we've allowed these to go through, but this property owner, we're going to say, no, actually, you're not allowed to. We're going to go against the precedents we have set, and we're going to say that it's your responsibility that there is a housing crisis in this country. Let's not worry about the state and federal government fixing it. All those property owners out there, it's your job now.
Thank you, Councillor Darren. And against, Councillor Wilcox?
Just on that point, this duplex is actually, or has been until now, already rented long term. So we're not asking for that to be abolished. We're just asking for the short term so that we can get some tradies in. We haven't even got a plumber in town because there's nowhere to live. Kids are having to leave school and families are having to leave town because no one can find anywhere to rent long term. So the more of this short term that we get, it's just detrimental to the whole community. So we're not against renting per se. It's only the short term in this area. There's plenty of others over in Baronia Ridge that are there. And hotel, motel, backpackers, everywhere.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Are there any speakers for? Any other speakers again? Oh, for?
I don't know. I'm really torn, sorry, Councillor. I'm going to vote for because I voted against the last one. But it's not up to us, to be fair. This is very different. This is the two new transporters. I know what you're talking about now. So I think this is slightly different. You're right, it's not up to us to solve the housing crisis. It's also not up to us to make sure there is wealth equalisation in this nation. We have enough lefties trying to do that. So we need to be very careful that we don't do that through default. People should be allowed to do you're right, people should be allowed to do what they like with their property. However, I think there are extenuating circumstances in certain communities, and Walpole's a very good example of that community. I'm not sure that was for or against.
Neither are we. Councillor Ventris.
I will speak against it, and some of it has already been said, but yeah, I think I agree with everything. There's two sides to this, and I agree with a lot that Councillor Darren said, but at the same time, I think in this case, there's a case that can be made that Walpole faces a very unique situation. It's highly attractive to tourists because it's such a wonderful part of the world. It's quite isolated, so it can't just rely, somewhere like Pemberton, we can rely on the surface town of Manjimup 30 kilometres away. They're quite isolated, so it's a very isolated community. It's a very unique situation. They can't get plumbers, they can't get people to stay in their school. So I think in this very unique situation, and if it does go to SAP, we need to be well versed we'll need to provide some reasons why we rejected this. I think because of the unique situation, it most probably doesn't mean that if we get more blocks of land and more housing built, that this couldn't change in the future and these people could reapply. And if they were to reapply, we maybe consider waiving their application fee. But in the current environment, and we all know across the state that there's a real housing problem, and I think the decision is sound, but in the future, I think it might as well that this organisation could reverse tonight's decision. In a different environment, we could have a different decision. But I think in the short term, in the next couple of years, the points that have been made by the local council are valid, even though it most probably goes against my normal grain to allow people to do what people want to do with their properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ivey, did you want to close the debate? Thank you.
I disagree with Councillor De Campo that this is a unique situation. We've faced many of these decisions over the past few years in every single one of our towns, and I could argue that we have the same issues with housing in every single one of our towns. Fully agree with Councillor Darren. The conditions and everything are here, just exactly the same as every other one that we've pretty much approved. So, yes, I just urge you to support it because it's just probably going to get approved at SAT anyway.
Thank you, councillors. Can we put it to the vote, please, councillors? All those in favour? 1, 2, 3. And against? Got that? Do you want to go back up? And against? Yep, can you just put your hands up for against?
It was 3 against.
It was 3.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. Yep. 3, 4. Got it? 6 against. What's not clear, Councillor Amadou? We've done the 4. We're just doing the against so that we can have it for the records of who was against. Thank you. That's the motion lost. Thank you. 3-6. Page 49. 9.5.4. Proposed brewery tasting room and restaurant at lot 8195 in brackets 341 Green Road, Channyberrup. Councillor De Campo.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to move that we defer item 954, proposed brewery tasting room restaurant at lot 8195 341 in brackets Green Road, Channyberrup, I move that A, this matter be deferred, and B, the applicant submit for Council's consideration a traffic impact assessment, and C, the item be returned to Council once the document requested at B has been provided and assessed.
Is there a seconder for the deferment, please? Councillor Mylan. Councillor De Campo.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd urge you to support the deferral of this motion. We've had today some confusion with changes of conditions, but essentially most of those conditions revolve around the road. I think without a traffic impact assessment, it is very difficult for us in here to make decisions, sound decisions, based on myth, essentially. So let's get a traffic impact assessment done. I agree with the proposal, actually. I think we would welcome any new tourism venture at any point, at any place in the Shire. However, they need to be done in a manner that is responsible and that provides certainty to those other community members that it will be built around. So I urge you to support the deferral and the requirement of a traffic impact assessment.
Councillor Mylan.
Yeah. I'd like to speak in favour of the deferral mainly. The second condition I'm not so sure about, but I'll go along with it. I think that I'd like Councillor De Campo, I'd love to see a brewery and a honey operation fermentation process happening. I think all of those things would be great for our tourist potential. But at the same, this project and the access is real. The access to the facility is actually a significant issue, I believe. We would be, if we were to not defer this, and if we were just to vote in favour of the officer's recommendation, we would be approving a 1,000 square metre plus facility as a brewery, and whilst the applicant at this stage...
Councillor Darren.
That's incorrect.
Incorrect information.
Can I point of order that? Yep, I point of order that is not accurate.
Mr CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. I think the point of order was in reference to a brewery being 1,000 square metres.
Yeah.
I think...
The building, 950 extra, I think, roughly it is.
Yeah, there are a variety of...
Take the square metre. Yeah, I'll take the square metre. Yeah, I'll retract that. Yeah, okay, a large building, and which could potentially, in future years, change use into a regular brewery with lots of traffic coming up and down. The main problem is the access on Greens Road. We know that people will really go on Brook Road, and the whole problem with this is that in our original officer's recommendation, we're talking about ensuring that the access is Greens Road, and including they have to put signs on there. And I think we can do some more work on this whole thing, because whilst DBCA don't want people to use Brook Road, the reality is that's where the traffic that's going to this place now is going. My understanding is that they're not accessing, I don't know how they could access via Greens Road now unless they went up and took the little west, whatever it is, track that goes across. Green Road, the other problem is Green Road by the Main Roads Department, the access onto Vass Highway is a problem. They say that, and we've now removed that from what we originally had. I think that intersection is a problem. The vision to the west, if you're coming onto that road, is not good, and there's not room for two vehicles to sort of get past each other. So for a number of reasons, including the sort of lateness and the process which Mr. Roach alluded to before, I think is not good for good decision making. I think we received the original thing on Friday, and then late today we got some updates which really substantially changed some of the conditions which were in there. And I think in the interest of good decision making and ready for our aim and all that, I think we should probably just review this and come up with something else. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify something? It's ready, aim, fire.
That's the point.
I think you missed the point. It's okay.
I did miss the point.
Yeah, you did. Councillor Darren. Oh.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Hang on, I've got to rethink my bloody question. My question is to the CEO. the requirement for a traffic assessment was removed from the original recommendation, the amended recommendation. Could you give an explanation as to why it was felt that that was reasonable?
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, quite happy to address the question to the Director of Development Services. If I head in the wrong direction, can you please correct me? Yeah, thanks. On advice, well, actually, if I may go back a step, because it will assist with that previous point of order, but will lead into this question as well. Councillor Mylan, I'm not sure if you picked up on the nuances there, but your reference to a brewery being 1,000 square metres was not correct, and that's Councillor Darren's point of order. I think the tourist element of it, I think, was around about 130 square metres, and the broader development is probably closer to 1,000. I'm not. So yeah, I think that was the point of order. In that vein, the recommendation in relation to traffic management was reduced on the basis of the information provided by the applicant in terms of the number of vehicle movements during peak hours being in the order of approximately 8.6, between 8.6 and 13 on a low and a high scale potentially. And the officer's analysis of that is that those vehicle movements would be split between Brook Road and Green Road, although more likely to be the majority of them on Brook Road. And the impost of a traffic impact assessment for that volume of traffic wasn't seen as an appropriate condition to apply.
So just on that traffic impact assessment, does that include safety issues as well on that road, or is it just to do with how many people coming up and down?
Mr. CEO.
My experience with a traffic impact assessment is more typically applied to a shopping centre in a metropolitan environment. And so I would need to, and I don't have experience with a traffic impact assessment in a regional environment in a priority agriculture area, because I haven't seen it applied before. Not to say that it hasn't been done, I just haven't been involved in that. So I would need to take a little bit of advice from probably Main Roads WA and the WA Planning Commission, or the Department of, what do they call it now? Planning, Lands and Heritage, have a variety of guidance notes on these sort of things, what's required in a traffic impact assessment. So our staff would need to spend a bit of time familiarising themselves with those elements.
Are there any other speakers? Are there any speakers against the deferment? Are there any others? Oh, Councillor Darren.
Yeah. Look, I'm comfortable. I read through the alternative on the amended motion. I can understand where Councillor Campo is coming from, and if councillors feel as though they haven't been able to sufficiently understand the recommendation, then they should defer. But I'm quite comfortable to say that I've read through the amended motion and I have a good understanding. I felt like I had enough time to understand what the changes were with regards to this, and I had time to speak to the staff if I had any questions about this. So I'm comfortable to continue ahead with the decision today. But I suppose it comes down to whether councillors feel that they are sufficiently ready to make that decision.
Speakers for, Councillor Omoney.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd received the proponent's letter at 5:30 last night. I received the amended recommendation to 9.5.4 at 1:30 this afternoon. I thought we would needed 24 hours notice for any major changes. And when I look at the application, just on the first page, on page 49, if you go to the last sentence, it says access to the property is currently by Brook Road, which is the logging road, with access from Green Road being restricted over the watercourse. There's actually an aerial photograph of Greens Road where it enters the property, and it's covered by water. So yeah, there's no doubt the honey signs have been adjacent to Brook Road for the last foreseeable past.
Point of order.
Talking about a deferral. Point of order.
New material.
No, it's about, we're talking about the deferring the.
Yeah, so, yeah, okay, right. Thank you for that, councillor. I think there are a number of issues in here relating to DWER, Department of Water and Environmental Regulation, DPIRD, Department of Planning and Infrastructure, Regional Development. There are issues to do with the Bushfire Management Plan that need clarification in relation to the Statement of Planning Policy. There are a number of other issues which I think we could revisit at our next briefing and get some clarity on those before we make a final decision, and therefore I support the deferment.
Thank you. Are there any against? For? Thank you, Councillor Ventris.
Yeah, I'll speak for the deferment. By nature, I'd be happy not to defer it. I'd prefer to make the decision so everybody knows what they're doing and we can all get along with it. But I would in supporting the deferment, I would point out that both deputations, Mr Sonata and Mr Ryan, both alluded that, in particular, that they wanted changes to the amended motion, and also Mr Ryan raised the fact that it was only a short period of time. So we've got both people that have spoken in the deputations raised concern about the time frame. So I think on that basis, with both those parties and the lead coming from the floor, I think there's a need to defer it. And even though that's not the ideal, we just don't have. And personally, I simply didn't have time. I was driving a bus. I haven't given it due time. And I think the changes are not minor, but reasonably major. We have had quite a few minor changes in the past, but so all weighed up. Even though it's not ideal to defer things, I'm sure there is those in the gallery who would like a decision, so we know where we all stand. I think wisdom in this situation would be to defer it, get all the facts, and come back next meeting. Thank you.
Question? Yeah, thanks.
If we defer this, does it come back exactly as the officer recommendation, or does it come back exactly as the amended recommendation?
Mr CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Given that the deferral is contingent on a traffic impact assessment being prepared, I think it would be incumbent upon the staff to review the recommendations and the proposal in the light of the traffic impact assessment. So it's quite likely that the body of the report will change and the recommendations may, but they may not, but they may change.
Can I ask, are there any timing implications of us deferring this?
Thank you, Madam President. Again, to the Director of Development Services, please keep me out of trouble here if I give some incorrect information. However, we're probably stepping up fairly close to the deemed refusal date, as in weeks, days?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but it would be coming up pretty close.
Yeah. So in terms of the process here, obviously we'll need to formally communicate the resolution of council, whatever it may be, not predicting the outcome. If it is a deferral, we'll need to formally communicate that with the applicant with the request to undertake a traffic impact assessment. That will probably involve a third-party consultant with a degree of expertise and the required tickets in that regard. That could be a month or two by the time that process is completed. Then it would need to be presented back to the council. So we will enter the deemed refusal process, and that will trigger the applicant's right to request either a reconsideration under the Shire's local planning scheme or potentially go to SAT. The SAT resolution would probably be a mediated outcome, requesting the council to consider it post haste, and we'll end up in the same position most likely.
Question?
Yeah, I have a question for the mover. Was it the mover's intention to bring this back to the next meeting?
Councillor Campo?
No, it wasn't. Do you want me to close the debate while I'm up here? I have a question on that, by the way, as well.
We haven't finished.
So I just have a question on the deemed 90-day thing is a little bit of a big stick thing, I think, that councils use when they want a decision out of the council. I mean, there's a trigger to that. So it's not a deemed, refusal because it hasn't happened on a certain date. I mean, the proponent has an option to trigger that. I don't think we even have an option to trigger it, do we? It's only the proponent. So can you just clarify deemed 90-day approval scenario, please.
The deemed 90-day refusal. Yep. Yeah. So, Director, would you like to address that question?
Yes.
I'll
be
defer to
happy
our Director of Development Services.
to address that question. So the 90 days expires. There's no reconsideration right. So the application is deemed refused unless it comes back before council and is considered and council approves or refuses it. So yeah, at that 90 days, what it gives is it gives the applicant the opportunity to get a decision from SAT. In my experience, it generally takes longer to get a decision from SAT rather than coming back to council after a couple of weeks, potentially.
Question, Councillor Darren?
You might not have an answer to this, but does anybody on the staff have any idea, an estimate on what a traffic impact assessment costs? If it's not a actual figure, are we talking hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands? What is the actual impact of something like this?
And can I add to that? Is this a seasonal thing? Like, does it have to be done at different times of the year, or what are the actual conditions of having to do a traffic impact assessment?
Thank you, Councillor Darren and Madam President. I might defer to our Director of Works and Services, who might have a bit more experience in a traffic impact assessment than myself.
Thank you, Mr CEO, and through the Chair, we've had experience where we've required traffic impact assessments for extractive industries, which is a temporary thing and is a different type of setup, and they've been, I think, like a couple of thousand. I think a couple of thousand. That's what I would imagine for this.
And it's a one-off thing? It doesn't have to be done?
No, it's a one-off thing.
Any other questions?
Can I move an amendment to the motion to defer? I'd like to move that we defer this and remove the condition to conduct a traffic assessment prior to considering it again. If that traffic assessment, which was actually in the original motion, in the original recommendations, has now been removed. So that might give us a bit of time just to get our heads around all of this stuff without imposing the burden on the applicant or us or anyone to go ahead and do this traffic assessment. I think a simple deferral, mainly because of the time frame and the changes that have happened sort of rapidly and would have put me in a position where I don't really feel comfortable about making the decision because of the different implications. So I'd move an amendment to Councillor De Campo's motion just to remove that condition that a traffic assessment is conducted, and we just defer this until the next meeting. I don't even know if we have to say the next meeting. Yeah.
Seconder, Councillor Darren. Sounds like you've already spoken to that.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway,
yeah.
Did you want to speak to it, Councillor Darren? Thank you. Any speakers against?
Yes. I think people are mixing up conditions and traffic assessments. There are issues on Green Road that residents are concerned with. I can answer all of those questions. This council made me do a traffic management plan. It made me do a traffic impact assessment, and it also made me do traffic counts on Mottram Street. So I can tell you exactly how a traffic impact assessment works, and I can tell you exactly how a traffic management plan works. They're very simple. It'll probably cost about $5,000. That's what it cost me to do the whole lot. But it will give you answers to the questions we don't have. If we just move this to another month, because if we move the amendment that Councillor Moylan is proposing, what that will do is it will just come back in the same form that it is here today. We may then, by the way, ask to have a traffic impact assessment done in a month's time, which would then cost the proponent another month. I've got all the contacts, by the way, for a traffic impact assessor who's in Bunbury, who's very good. A particular staff member in a previous council determined that I needed to have that happen. So I understand traffic impact assessments, traffic management plans and traffic counts. I think it's really important, though, that we're going to put more traffic on a road that has no traffic currently from that organisation. because it is going through Brook Road. So it's very important that we give at least comfort to those people on Green Road that we've taken into account the fact that they're going to have more traffic. I can't say how much. We talked about numbers on Monday of 130 going to 260, potentially less, potentially more, because some of those things are open-ended. But if we haven't done our due diligence on that road and having that traffic impact assessment done, we won't know that. I don't agree with main roads wanting big whiz-bang intersections. That's not what the traffic impact assessment is about. It's about the condition and the road and what it may need or may not need to happen. But without that information, we're just making a decision based on good faith. So I urge you to move against the amendment.
Are there any speakers for the amendment? Councillor Omodo.
Madam President, councillors, so I'm supporting the amendment because I really believe this item needs to be deferred, whether it's a traffic management plan or whatever. If you look at the letters that are in the attachment from DFES, where it talks about the statement of planning policy, the submission that was provided was done on last year's statement of planning policy, and on page 238, if you look down the bottom, the last dot point says further clarification is required within the BMP of the requirements of Statement of Planning Policy 3.7 and the supporting guidelines as outlined in our assessment below. And it goes on. And there are similar letters from DPERD and from DWER in relation to the clearing of the land. That's not yet been
Point of order.
dealt with. That's not yet been dealt with. So the facts of the matter are that access to the property is being gained through Green Road and from Vass Highway at Green Road, and also the intersection of the logging road. What is the status of the logging road? A lot of unanswered questions in relation to this issue that need to be cleared up before approval is given. That's why it needs to be deferred.
Yeah, we're dealing with the amendment, Councillor Omodo. So you... Of the amendment. Okay, thank you. Against the amendment? Okay, would you like to close the debate, Councillor Mylan?
I agree with Councillor Omodo. Really just to say the same point, I think just a simple deferral while we get our heads around it all is what's required here. Otherwise we're just jumping into another thing which I think is it's probably going to be a good idea, and if the applicant decides they want to go and do a traffic assessment now, they might want to do that anyway. But I just think we probably shouldn't make that a condition of us considering this matter in the future, because we don't know. That puts too long a time frame on it, and we want to try and resolve the issue as quickly as we can.
Okay. Can we put the amended motion to the vote, please? All those... The amendment to the vote, please. All those in favour? And against? It's carried 6-3. Okay, so the motion is now the substantive motion, which is to just defer without item B. Okay. We're just going to vote. Can you...
No, I'd like to speak.
Councillor De Campo.
I'd like to speak against the deferral. What we've done now is defer for no reason. If you're going to come back here because you want to read your agenda, you might as well have read it before you came here. So I urge you not to defer this motion. You don't want to put this proponent through any other scrutiny in relation to Green Road and the safety of Green Road tonight, so don't put him through any more pain by waiting for another month for us to come back and make the same decision. Grow a set and not defer it.
Are there any speakers for the deferment? That's what I'm thinking too. That's right. Which is just deferring. Councillor Ventris.
I'll speak for the substantive motion. I think we've all got quite confused, all right? We've had deputations and they were raising concerns and slight changes and 2 hours notice, and I think we're all a little confused. I think let the dust settle. Look, I think we've brought this upon ourselves a little bit in the assessment. Normally we would have a meeting on a Thursday. We're going through this new process.
Point of order. We're talking about deferring.
I'm giving reasons for deferment. I'm speaking for the deferment, aren't I?
Yep.
I think we've become so confused that I stand to speak for the deferment and then I'm interrupted. I'm speaking for the deferment, the substantive motion, I thought I said. May I continue, Madam President?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so I think we've become so confused. This is just the very reason why we need to defer this, let the dust settle, take a breath, read through all the information, give an opportunity for the proponent to potentially provide more information in plenty of time, give a chance for the officers to come back, and I think 1 month is a reasonable deferment given the short process. So I'm speaking for the deferment. Thank you.
I have a question. Will we be asking the proponent for more information before the next meeting?
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll probably need to take a little bit of advice on this, because if the request is to defer the agenda item, it could be interpreted that precisely the same agenda item needs to be represented at the next available council meeting. The substantive motion, now I'm doing it, the substantive motion doesn't nominate a date for the meeting to come back to either. It would make sense that it would come back to the next ordinary council meeting. I would need to take a little bit of advice on that. Maybe there is an opportunity that the executive can request more information from the applicant and present new information despite the agenda item being deferred. I would like that, to be able to provide some clarity around the agenda item, and that'll be my intent to find a way through that. But potentially there is a possibility that precisely the same agenda item with precisely the same set of recommendations will be presented to the April council meeting.
Councillor Ivey.
If the substantive motion is voted down, do we need to foreshadow the alternate amended recommendation? What happens if the defer?
Mr. CEO, yep.
Thank you, Madam President. So if the deferral is lost, so it's not carried by 5 or more votes, there is essentially no decision, which would trigger the requirement for me to bring an agenda item back to council. And to be honest, it's probably a bureaucratically neater way to deal with it. I'm a little less worried about the bureaucracy and more interested in getting the decision right, though.
Could I foreshadow the officer's recommendation?
Thank you, Councillor Darren. Yes, you can. Okay, so do we don't need to second that, do we? Foreshadow? No. Okay, can we please, are there any other speakers for the substantive motion? Yes, without point B. Okay. Councillor De Campo, did you want to close the debate? Thank you. Can we please vote on the substantive? No, it's not. It's an alternative. Oh, yes, it is, because you're the alternative. Did you want to close the debate?
No, I think the debate's been had.
Thank you.
I'll move the motion to be put.
Thank you. Can we all vote on that, please, councillors? All those in favour of the substantive motion? Which reads that this matter be deferred and the item be returned to council once the document requested has... Oh, no, that's it. That this matter be deferred.
Question before we do the vote. Sorry, you had a question after the vote last time.
No, it's fine.
I think in discussing the deferment today, you have to have a reason to defer, don't you, or not? You can just defer on any...
Through Madam President, if I may, the obligation of the council to give a reason for its decision is generally only held for a refusal of a planning application, not for deferral.
We good? Okay, can we please vote on that this matter be deferred? All those in favour? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And against? 2, 5. Right, so the substantive motion has been defeated. 5-4. Councillor Darren.
I move the officer's recommendation.
Is there a seconder to the officers? Councillor De Campo. Councillor Darren, did you want to speak to the motion?
Really briefly, I do want to speak to the motion. Look, I think one of the biggest issues here, and it was my point of order, and I understand it wasn't Councillor Mylan's intent to mislead or anything like that, but I just wanted to clear it up. This is a production facility with 130 square metres dedicated to making ambrosia, which is a alcoholic drink that only fits in with our state government's planning uses of brewery. It is 130 square metres in over 1,000 square metres. I believe from the information that we've received that we are talking about less than 10% of this development is going to be for this purpose. The additional traffic movement at the amount, and look, whether we have a traffic assessment or not, the traffic assessment is still on the information provided by the proponent, because you can't do an assessment on your own assumptions. You have to do it on what the information is provided. The information that has been provided is that there will be, at most, 264 movements per week. That is 132, because one car coming in and going out is 2 movements. There's 132 over an entire week. I understand that there is concerns around additional movements, but there is quite a few avocado farms on that road, and I suspect with their workers coming in and out, trucks coming in and out at different seasons, that they also have quite a bit of movement happening on that road. So I do find it difficult to say that an enterprise that is going to have potentially 132 vehicles attending that site every week, and that's based on the information we've been provided. Now, if they don't do that, if it becomes more, well, then they will need to do additional works, because they will have been going beyond what the scope of what they are doing is. They would have to increase their area size of what they are going to do for the brewery restaurant. That's not quite a brewery restaurant. And we would then be having that planning application come back to us. If that 130 square metres becomes 500 square metres of a restaurant, that planning application will come back to this council, and we will discuss that, and we will look at the traffic movements that are associated with that. The information that's been provided to us, and keeping in mind every single application we ever assess, whether it's a gravel pit, whether it is a dam, whether it is a holiday house, we make those decisions based on the information provided to us, and the conditions and the advice within the recommendations is based on the information given by the proponent. So we will be making that decision, and I think within that scope, within the scope that has been provided to us, this officer's recommendation is reasonable for what is being proposed. It becomes very difficult when you start using words like brewery and restaurant, because when we say brewery, we think of Tall Timbers in town, but we're not comparing Tall Timbers in town to what this is going to be. So we do need to look at things on a case-by-case basis. And I am comfortable that there has been enough within here that has been considered. I think we do have, and I think this was said at the special meeting, we have very talented staff. We have very dedicated staff who are able to understand these planning applications and the requirements of these things a lot better than we are, and they have presented a recommendation in here based on their professional knowledge and understanding. So I would suggest that we all support that, and we support the recommendation that has been provided to us, and encourage a business, an agricultural business, because creating honey is still agriculture. Encouraging an agricultural business to value add, which is what the state and federal government keeps putting funding into, value adding our products to ensure that they are able to be sent out to a higher level market internationally, interstate, and even within our own domestic local markets, that we encourage more of that happening. Because we cannot entirely rely on primary produce only to support our economy. We do need to look at diversifying our businesses, diversifying our economy, and this is a perfect example of somebody that is looking to do that. And I think it's within the scope of what we would want in this space. And certainly if I thought that it was going to have a detrimental impact on the neighbouring properties, I would 100% agree that we needed to defer or we needed to look at this. But this was reviewed and looked at by our staff, and they have come up with a determination that this fits within the scope of the activities that are going to be undertaken there. So I would encourage you to support the substantive motion.
Thank you, Councillor Darren. Councillor De Campo.
No, you can't. I speak against the motion. I can't believe that we stand here today and say that 52 cars a day on your street, if something was put at the end of it, made no difference to your amenity. I can't believe today that we're going to put every gravel pit that's coming up, we won't make them to do a traffic impact assessment because we trust the proponent to do the right thing. This is bad planning and it's bad decision making. I can tell you right now. When you talk about a 5-day week, 264 vehicles, just think about that. It's 52 vehicles a day that aren't entering on Green Road, Councillor Amadei. There is no entrance to the property on Green Road right now. They're all going to enter from there, not Brook Road. So to exclude, and if you talk about, yes, and staff have done a great job, however, they've given us a second set of conditions today, which has taken out the obligations for a traffic impact assessment. I couldn't care less about anything else. I don't care about on the property, the shed, the kitchen, the balcony, whatever. It's more about the amenity and the safety of those that are visiting that particular facility in the future. 52 vehicles a day. Just think about that. 5 days a week, 8 till 4. If you talk about avocado farmers, at 6 in the morning, 6 vehicles turn up with 6 people in them and a truck goes out once a day. So I'm not sure how that even factors into the safety of people using the road. But if that's the decisions we want to make, I urge you to vote against this project now because we don't have the proper information in front of us. A traffic impact statement through a deferral would have been the most responsible way to ensure that we had the answers that we need. We don't have the answers now. Because what we're doing tonight, if we approve this project, that's it. It doesn't come back to us. There is no requirement for them to do anything to the road. It will all be us in the future. So just think about that when you make the decision, is all I'll tell you. Another one.
Yep.
I'd like to move an amendment to the officer's most recent recommendation to delete point 6. Green Road is to be used as the primary access for the landowner and sole ingress and egress for any commercial tourism business vehicular visitation and signposted appropriately. I'd like to remove that. And I'd like to include from the old set of recommendations, number 10, prior to the operation of the proposed restaurant and tasting room, a traffic impact assessment statement that outlines the potential impacts on the surrounding transport network in terms of upgrade requirements, safety of users and dust management is required to be submitted and approved by the Shire of Manjimup. Have I made myself clear there? Page 58, it doesn't refer to Brook Road. So I'm suggesting we remove condition 6. Green Road is to be used as the primary access, because this is the cause. I won't debate it, I'll just try and move it. Green Road is to be used as the primary access. I want to remove that condition from the most recent sheet that we got. And I want to go back and include page 58 from the original officer's recommendation, which was deleted this afternoon's one, and include point 10, prior to the operation, and so on. Is that, have I made that clear, Madam President?
Yep, thank you. Clear as...
I have a question.
Question, Councillor.
A traffic impact statement doesn't necessarily have to be presented by an approved traffic impact assessor, does it?
Correct. A traffic impact statement could be undertaken by the applicant.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to alter my amendment to where it says in point 10,
Yep.
well, I want to include a traffic impact assessment / statement.
Yep.
To just include traffic impact assessment. I believe that's what.
And
Councillor
delete statement.
Camp, yeah.
But you just removed Green Road, aren't you? Removing Green Road.
No, well, they can still be used, but we still need to, you know, people will still have access on that road, I guess. Yeah, maybe that's confusing, but anyway. That's my amendment.
Question, Councillor.
Take that out and put that in.
I have a question. The point 6 on the new amendment is also point 6 on the original amendment. So we are just removing point 6.
Okay, is that right?
Is that, what implications does that have? Because point 6 in the new amendment doesn't relate to point 10 in the old, recommendation. But point 6 is actually in both recommendations. Does that make sense? Okay.
That's right.
Yep. Yep.
So is there any implication? No.
Mr. CEO.
Sorry, Madam President. Sorry, Councillor Down. I thought you were requesting if there is an implication from a governance procedural perspective for the meeting, or did you mean an implication for the development application itself? Yeah, okay. I'll answer that question. And I will again defer to our director if I tread incorrectly here. Green Road is the only gazetted road. Sorry, my understanding is that Green Road is the only gazetted road that the property has direct access to. I might not be 100% correct there, but I'm pretty sure that's right. And then, so therefore, it's almost a moot point by including that that recommendation because it is a fact already. I suppose that recommendation or that condition was trying to capture Main Roads and DBCA's comments that the primary access to the property is to be via the gazetted road and rather than through a DBCA asset or forestry road. So it's probably neither here nor there in terms of the development application. It's more there for clarity rather than anything else. Have I trod correctly there,
Correct.
Mr. Director?
Yes, just looking at the submission provided by DBCA, they know they don't maintain Brook Road for private property access and that landholders should not rely on Brook Road as the primary access.
Councillor Down.
Question?
Just to clarify
Councillor
for
Down.
Councillor Mylands, is the intent of you changing the point, so you're going to insert point 10 back in, removing the word statement. Is your intent that the traffic impact assessment could be done by the proponent rather than needing to be done by a consultant? Is that the intent?
I don't know. Whoever, a properly authorised one, because I don't know who does those, but Councillor De Campo does.
Because I've had to have
Yeah.
Gosh. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. Whilst I don't know a lot about traffic impact assessments, not being involved in a regional setting, the WA Planning Commission or the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, as well as Main Roads, have volumes on detail of what a traffic impact assessment is, what is supposed to be in it, and the level of accreditation you need to be able to sign off a traffic impact assessment.
Okay.
Can
Councillor
I-
Almaday.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Madam President, I understand we're dealing with an amendment at the moment,
Yep.
Councillor Mylands' amendment. My view is that this matter should be defeated, the substantive motion, and we just heard the Director
We
of
haven't
Development.
got a seconder for it yet. There've been questions.
Okay,
It
question.
hasn't actually been.
Okay, I'll go back to a question then. If I refer you to page 246, it's one of the submissions made by one of the people opposed to it. Is that map on page 246 accurate?
In the
Page 246 in the attachment?
in the attachments.
The reason I ask, Madam President, is we've just had a statement by the Director of Development Regulation that DBCA says that Brook Road is not the preferred option. And if you look at that map, it shows that the road is inundated between the dams, so the causeway is inundated. So that's one of the reasons why I want this matter to be sent back to the briefing session for further clarity. Answer the question?
No. Mr CEO?
Apologies, Councillor Almaday. I was thumbing through the appendices to get the right page. I didn't quite capture the question. So would
The
you
question
mind
is that map accurate, and is the road inundated at that point?
I might need to defer to the Director of Development Services. Do you happen to know? I couldn't.
You went out there yesterday, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't head down there though. I couldn't tell you the age of the aerial image. I don't know if it's.
So there's no. What I'm trying to get at, there's no clarity about which road. Are both of the roads going to be used? For a start, what is the status of Brook Road? Is it an approved road? Can it be used by the general public like a lot of other log roads are? Is there public liability covered there for the use of that road? And given that the honey signs have been there for the last 2 years, and obviously the proponent's using Brook Road, the comments are talking about Green Road and access from Green Road, which is the concern of the people that are in the gallery. So we really need to deal with this appropriately and send it back to the committee. So I'm opposed to the amendment and the recommendation. Now, I think this thing needs to be defeated and go back to where we started so that we can ask questions. There are serious questions to be asked about the bushfire management plan. Have a look on the bottom of page 238 from the Department of Fire and Emergency Services.
Yeah, I know. Can we have a seconder?
I'll second the deferment.
Thank
Only because
you.
I'd like to hear what it was. It was a little bit. Yeah, I'll second your amendment.
Your amendment.
Sorry.
Okay.
But can I hear the amendment,
Which
please?
I think Councillor Almaday was supposed to ask a question.
The amendment is officer's recommendation as per the photocopy sheet that we got this afternoon. But delete point 6, which says, I should stand up. Hold back.
How's the knee going?
Green Road is, which says that Green Road is to be used as, I don't want to can't debate this yet, I'm still just trying to get this motion across the table here. Green Road is to be used as the primary access for the landowner and sole ingress and egress for any commercial, tourism, business, vehicular, how do you say that? Visitation and signposted appropriately. So I want to delete that condition. And I can debate why if I've got a seconder.
If someone seconds it.
Then
So
I have got a
do
seconder?
now. Yep, Councillor
Okay, so I can debate
Campo,
that. Is that what I'm allowed to
would
do?
you like to speak to...
Yeah, I'll talk to that bit first. I'll talk to the deletion of point 6 first.
Thank
Is that
you.
okay, Madam
Yep,
President?
thank you.
Okay, so deletion
Let's
of
break
point
it
6 is,
down.
I reckon one of the reasons we're in this whole bind is because DPOR put a submission in which said they want this Green Road to be the primary access. They stated that. Now, other bodies put in submissions, Main Roads, FISA. We haven't included all their conditions in all of these conditions. We've included all their recommendations. We've included bits of some and some of others. I reckon if this was deleted, status quo would probably just mean that people would continue to go down Brook Road, which they're probably going to do anyway. But what we're dictating by keeping this in, we're dictating to the proponents, you have to use Green Road and you have to put a signpost on there. And if someone goes to their property basically down Brook Road, we can go and say, hey, you're not meeting the conditions of this. Right? We're putting a condition on that they have to go down Green Road or used as the primary access. So I guess there's a little bit of leeway there. And I think as our CEO has said, it's probably a moot point. If it wasn't there, then we would probably be able to approve this knowing that people would go down Brook Road, where they're going anyway, right? And that's my reason for amending and getting rid of that, okay? Because it takes away the necessity for the proponent to make sure that everyone goes down Green Road. It still means that he has got to provide access there, because that's part of it. You know, he's got to provide an access there, but it doesn't tell people that they have to go down there. Now, I'll go to Councillor De Campo, point 10, which is on page 58 of the actual original agenda that we received. And that says, this addresses the traffic problem. Because there's still going to be some people going down Green Road. But, you know, we'll have, whoever does the traffic impact assessment is going to determine on what percentage of people are going to do that and what percentage of people are going to go in the other way. Who knows? That's for the experts. But this just says prior to the operation of the proposed restaurant, not prior to commencing building or anything like that. It just says prior to the operation of the business and tasting room, the assessment has to be done. And the potential impacts on the surrounding transport network in terms of upgrade requirements, safety of users. So it gives some meat to what we want in this traffic assessment. It says we want upgrade requirements, safety of users, and dust management is required to be submitted to and approved by the Shire of Manjimup. So I think that captures some of the intent of what we've been talking about tonight as well. It captures the idea that we're concerned about the traffic. Before you open, you need to deal with this. And you know, there's going to be some time, that gives a bit of time to get that job done. So I would be happy to move these amendments, delete this thing about going down Greens Road, because I think that's a problem. It really is. And prior to opening, they need to do a traffic assessment. That's my total argument for it.
Thank you. Councillor De Campo.
Just questions at this point. In the letter from Tim Foley, it doesn't actually state that we can't recommend that the proponent use Brook Road. It states that the current landowner is using a DBCA road for the primary access to his property. It says that they don't maintain forest tracks, although that's quite a well-maintained one. It requests that this approval for the commercial development be subject to the proponent confirming that a gazetted access is to be used. Just requests. And it also advises some department managed land, things might take place on their land. Don't know if it's going to fly, but why don't we just give access through Brook Road or give an approval without a road?
Yeah, don't put the road.
We'd have to strike out a number of other things, by the way, so this is getting very messy. But DBCA haven't, well, you can't bring it back because once we reject it, it's rejected. So it has to be dealt with tonight now, and it's a mess. But the reality is, DBCA hasn't stopped the proponent currently using Brook Road. We've got residents on Green Road, and I don't think 52 vehicles a day is probably, particularly good for Green Road. Brook Road, nobody uses it, so there's less traffic integration. Can we, I'm getting to a question, can we take out all forms of requirement in relation to road access to the proponent's project? Given they just request, they don't demand, it's advice. We normally take advice as gospel, but it is just advice. Can we do that?
It's a very good question, and I do not have a definitive answer on that. Look, I think the risk is if we remove the, acknowledging where the access to the property is, DBCA could shut that road on the proponent and they're left without a clear access.
Can I make a comment?
Councillor Winfield.
I'm a long way out of date, but when I was in DBCA, there is no instrument to close a road unless there's an operation on it. So there's been a test case about this many years ago, and unless it's a quarantine road, DBCA roads are open.
Thank you, Councillor Winfield.
Another question.
Question?
If that were to happen, and I do agree with Councillor Winfield, I think that's exactly right, unless it's Phytophthora affected area or it's a national park, that they can close, access cannot be not granted. So my question then is, I mean, if that were to happen, which is highly unlikely and would be irregular, we would just go back to the process of approving Green Road as an access at that point, wouldn't we?
Mr. CEO?
Sorry to contradict you, Mr. Director. I think the answer is no, unless there was another development application from the applicant to change something on the property. Once we've given the approval, we can't go back and revisit the conditions just because another road access has changed. So we need to deal with it now or not. And if we don't deal with it now, the only instrument for the council to be able to have any effect over the condition or road traffic assessments or whatever we want to call them for Green Road will be if there's another development application lodged, say to expand the facility.
So just further question, sorry. So that means we're just at the place we're at now. We're saying you can use Brook Road and maybe Green Road if you want to, but if nobody can enter from Green Road, you can't use Green Road because there's no entrance. You just direct them through Brook Road. So effectively, if that happened, we're just where we're at now. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question though? So in the new recommendations, item 12, prior to the occupation of the development, the vehicle crossover between the subject land and Green Road is to be located, designed, construction and drained. So there would actually be an alternative entrance, but we would not be saying that Green Road needs to be the primary entrance. Cool. Why would we declare? Why would we defeat it?
I think I can speak now, can't I? I'm lost. I can because I haven't spoken yet. I think for the benefit of all parties involved, Councillor Moylan's
Mylan. Like Milo. Mylan.
Oh, that's right, violin, that's right. Councillor Mylan's amendment actually solves a lot of problems. I think this will be a good test case actually to push back against the government department, by the way, just to see what happens. Sorry to use you as a rat, but I think this actually solves a lot of problems. It's where the access comes from now. I think we should strike point 12 out as well. If you'd like to move to add to your amendment, this is getting really messy. And all reference to Green Road out of the item. And then if DBCA do close the road or close Brook Road, which they can't because they can't limit access, we're just back to where we were anyway, with access on Greens Road.
With a traffic assessment.
What do you need?
You don't need
So delete 10.
Councillor Ivey.
If we deleted point 12, would there be issues if there's fires on Brook Road?
That's right.
I've got a question that might answer that. If there's fires around, would any of those roads be open? I don't think you're going to go and buy honey if there's a fire in the bush.
Is that a rhetoric question, Councillor De Campo? Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Question. Can you just repeat your question? Fire. Oh yes, if there was a fire, would there be an alternative exit?
As Councillor Omade has pointed out multiple times now, it's probably best addressed through the bushfire management plan for the site, which will generally always recommend multiple points of exit.
The DFES stuff. Madam Chair, the DFES recommendations, obviously just glossing over, and I've raised it now, this is the third time. Have a look at page 39, 239 and 238, what DFES says, and the risk of the bushfire, severe bushfire. So the bushfire management plan doesn't cover the thing. That's why we need to discuss it at more length at the briefing session.
But we're not deferring, so that's not an issue. Councillor Mylan, did you have something?
Can I move an amendment to the amendment?
Hang on, wait.
I just had a question Is there access to the property via Green Road now? I mean, we were up there, but we didn't go into the property via that entry. It looked like it was grown over and not really usable. Is that correct? There's no access to the property?
No visible access.
Yeah, I mean, you could bash your way through, I guess, but not proper. Okay. There probably needs to be.
Can I
Councillor
move an amendment to the
DeCampo?
amendment, please?
Sure.
I know it's complicated, but we're at this spot now, we've got to keep going. I'd like to remove point 6 of the new conditions. I'd like to remove point 10 that councillor Mylan added back in, and I'd like to remove point 12. Taking out point 10.
Taking 10 back out, 6 out, and 12 out.
What this does is it cleans it up, it gets some clarity, it takes Green Road completely out of the application and puts the onus back on Brook Road for the access, which is probably a better outcome for all involved anyway.
Is there a seconder to the Councillor Winfield? The amendment, Councillor
Amendment to the
Winfield.
amendment?
Can I move that the motion be put?
Which one?
I second that.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Is that yours? The amendment to the
The
amendment?
amendment to the amendment, can we put it to the
I just have a procedural question.
We do.
question?
Well, just for the sake, because we've been here a night, I just want to know from the CEO whether we've got this procedurally correct. We've got a mover for the amended recommendation from staff. We've got a seconder. But given the scenario that we've had and advertised and it's on the website, an officer's recommendation, are we remiss in not reading this out, given that this is an amended recommendation? I know we all want to go home. I want to go home. I just want to get this right. Normally, when we do an amended recommendation or a change, we have to go through the process of reading that all out. We haven't done that at this stage. The mover hasn't done that. I'm happy to ignore it. I'm just asking the question to the CEO, have we followed due process? Given that on our website, we don't have this on our website. We've been given this a couple of hours ago. So does the mover need to read all those changes and all this? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ventris. I was almost about to save council from a procedural error, and I understand it's been quite a while in the making. However, procedurally, I think yes, for the sake of clarity, for the gallery, but also for mostly for the councillors who are being asked to vote, we should read through the motion in its entirety to make sure everybody has clarity. But also, and Councillor DeCampo knows what I'm about to say, you can't amend an amendment without resolving the amendment first. There is a simple solution to it. Councillor Mylan, if you withdraw your amendment, because it is captured almost entirely by Councillor DeCampo's amendment with the
Right. So this is withdrawn.
Yes, I withdraw my amendment and accept the...
So Councillor DeCampo has the new amendment.
Okay, would you like me to read
All the questions tonight, it's because I haven't been around for a while. Can I have a question on that, please?
Who has seconded your amendment?
Councillor Darren.
Councillor Darren, thank you.
No, it was...
Oh no, Councillor
Oh,
Winfield.
was it? Oh, sorry.
Yep.
We wouldn't read that until the amendments pass, though, would we? Because then it becomes a substantive motion.
That's right.
Yeah, sure.
That's right. So because we weren't voting on the amendment, we were voting on the move to put it to the vote, then when we go to that, we would read it out. I'm onto it, don't worry. I've got a list. Okay, can we please put that we're putting this to the vote, because that was moved by Councillor Darren, seconded by Councillor DeCampo. Councillors, can we put this to the vote, that we are putting it to the vote? Fabulous, moves 9-0. The amendment, the amended motion, the amendment now, which has been moved by Councillor DeCampo, seconded by Councillor Winfield. Councillor DeCampo, do you want to read it out? Yep. Oh, yep, right, yep. Jesus.
Through the chair.
Yep.
If you're okay with it. Just for the sake of clarity, I think it's worthwhile reading out the amendment, or the intent of the amendment, and I can capture it for you very, very quickly, that it is the officer recommendations as circulated earlier this afternoon, removing items 6, 10, 12.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. But
No,
we still have to read it out for the
only
gallery.
6 and 12. Because
Only
we
6 and 12.
withdrew that included the 10, because Steve withdrew his, which...
Help what Councillor Ventress was saying, because people out there can't. Oh God, here we go.
Okay.
But we're
6
not
and
up
12.
to that yet.
No, so do you want to do it now, or do you want to do it once the amendments?
We need to
Passed.
move and we need to speak to the amendments now before we vote, and then we
Can I just get the
summarise.
advice from the CEO? Do we need to read it now, or do we need to read it once the amendment's passed?
My advice is you do both.
Yeah.
I'm not clear on what the amendment is, and I'm responsible for keeping the minutes. So that's probably the first start. So if you can confirm.
So the amendment is now that we remove point 6.
Mhm.
We remove point 12.
Mhm.
And that's it.
Yep.
Okay? And I now can read that out if you want. No? Okay, great.
Not yet. Okay, is there a... Oh, well, now we're just voting on it because we've done that. Okay. So now you can read or summarise the motion. Oh, is that what we've done there?
So you need to get a vote on the amendment that's been put, that the amendment be put. So
Yep.
There's no more debate, you just need to vote on the amendment, and that's it.
Right, excellent. Thank God for that. All those in favour of the amendment? And against? Carried 8-1. Thank you. You. Yep, Councillor Darren.
Okay.
Yep.
Because you haven't heard from me enough tonight. So I move that Council, in accordance with Part 10 and Clause 5.5 of Local Planning Scheme Number 4, grants approval for the proposed brewery, tasting room and restaurant at Lot 8195 341 Green Road, Channy Barrup, TP 2025/9, subject to the plans and specifications shown at attachment 9.4, but 9.5.4 in brackets 1, and subject to the following conditions. 1. The development hereby approved is to be carried out generally in accordance with the plans and specifications submitted with the application, and these shall not be altered and or modified without the prior knowledge and written consent of the Shire of Manjimup. Do I need to read all that out? The little table. Number 2, notwithstanding condition 1, prior to commencement of the development, the site plan shall be modified to reflect the actual existing access, and the bushfire management plan submitted and hereby approved shall be modified as follows. 2.1, remove any wording directing people to Manjimup town site and adjust the errors that the Manjimup Community Resource Centre is a welfare centre. 2.2, adjust the error on page 45, Margaret River Welfare Centre, when the instruction is to travel to Nannup. 2.3, prepare and include a landscape management plan for the land surrounding the development to ensure that the native vegetation within the asset protection zone is managed in a low threat state. 2.4, correct excluded vegetation classified in plot 5 of the Bow assessment. 2.5, plans to be updated to show how access will be provided to the proposed water tank. 3, the brewery hereby approved is for the installation of no more than 12 1,000 litre IBCs, and the annual beverage manufacturing volume is limited to a total volume of 312 kilolitres per year. 4, the hour of operation of the proposed use shall be limited to the periods between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday to Thursday and Sundays, 10 a.m. and 9 p.m. Friday and Saturday. 5, prior to the commencement of works, the applicant is to submit and have approved to the satisfaction of the Shire of Manjimup a detailed parking plan design which complies with Table 2 and 3 of the Shire of Manjimup Local Planning Scheme Number 4, including 16 parking bays comprising 10 visitor bays and 6 staff bays, aisle widths, circulation areas, driveways and points of ingress and egress. 6. All stormwater and drainage runoff is to be retained on the subject property to the satisfaction of the Shire of Manjimup. 7. Prior to the commencement of the development and operation management plan to address amenity issues including smoke, fumes, noise, vibration, odour, vapour, dust, waste, water, waste products or other pollutants is required to be submitted to and approved by the Shire of Manjimup. 8. A detailed proposal for landscaping, including the nature playground on the subject property, is to be submitted to and approved by the Shire of Manjimup prior to the commencement of any site works, and the approved plans shall thereafter be implemented prior to occupation of the development hereby approved, and the landscaping permanently maintained to the satisfaction of the Shire of Manjimup.
10.
9.
Oh, 9, yep.
9. The construction works involved in the implementation. Oh, yes, okay, sorry. 9. The plans referred to above shall, to the satisfaction of the Shire of Manjimup, and shall be implemented to its satisfaction prior to the occupation of the land development for its approved purpose and thereafter maintained as appropriate under the approved plan. 10. The construction works involved in the implementation of the development must not cause a nuisance to the neighbours through dust and or sand drift. 11. The use hereby approved must not create community safety concerns or otherwise adversely affect the amenity of the subject locality by reason of or the appearance or emission of smoke, fumes, noise, vibration, odour, vapour, dust, wastewater, waste products or other pollutants to the satisfaction of the Shire of Manjimup. 12. The applicant must implement all of the recommendations contained in the Bushfire Management Plan prepared by Ecosystem Solutions dated 13th of November 2024 as amended and approved by the Shire of Manjimup for the duration of the development. Advice. Ooh. I don't have to read the advice. Ooh.
Right.
Could you just repeat that?
No.
Sorry, Madam President.
Thank
But
you.
just to confirm, the advice is part of the resolution, but it's unchanged as per the published version. Is that correct?
Yes. But includes the advice that is not changed from the published version provided today.
Yep. Excellent. Okay. Do we need a seconder? No, we've already done all that. Okay, we're putting it to the vote, councillors. All...
I move the motion be put.
Seconder? Councillor Darren, all those in favour? All those in...
Motion. Can I, CEO? Is it procedural?
Procedural?
You're not allowed to debate a procedure.
No. No. All those in favour of putting it to the vote? Carried. Against? Sorry, thank you. 7-2. All those in favour of the motion? And against? Carried 6-3. Steve, Paul, Murray. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. 10. Late reports. Councillor Omodo has left the chambers. Thank you. 10 late reports are a nil. 11 questions from members. Response for questions and members taken on notice. Questions from members. Motions for consideration at the following meeting. 13, new business of an urgent nature introduced by a decision of the meeting. What? God, I hope so. 14, applications for leave of absence. 15, there being no further business to discuss, I wish to thank those in attendance and close the meeting at 8:24. Thank you.